teams, one per conference. Only the number one seed would have an opening round bye. The league states 2 extra teams would earn playoff bonuses. Networks would get 2 extra games for the revenue, and fan interest would increase, with their team still having a shot at the postseason. The union's 11 executive committee members, many of whom were opposed to a 17-game season just a couple of weeks ago, they would have to vote to recommend this deal to the 32-team reps for it to move forward. It could be in effect as early as this season. NBA second half starts tonight. Brooklyn's in Philly. And despite the league's best record at home, 25-2, Sixers coach Brett Brown isn't taking the Nets lightly.
They always give us trouble. Like they got a bunch of live ball players that can just get their shots all by themselves. They play at a pace that if you're not careful can be punishing.
Philadelphia is a 9-point favorite. Tip-off is at 8. College hoops, Big East wins for Seton Hall and Villanova, and 6th-ranked Duke lost by 22 at NC State. That's your NBC Bloomberg Sports Update. Nathan?
Thanks, Rob. It's 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
U.S. states are stepping in to kill harmful mergers. I'm Tara Chappelle, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. The anything goes world of mega mergers under President Trump has encountered new resistance, with U.S. states emerging as a powerful antitrust backstop. Ordinarily, U.S. mergers would be scrutinized by the Department of Justice or the FCC, but after both approved T-Mobile's controversial takeover of Sprint, more than a dozen state attorneys general from around the country sued to block the deal. The states ultimately lost in court last week, handing a victory to the wireless carriers, but the group's persistence is sure to unnerve other deal-hungry CEOs. The threat of similar legal action and months of proceedings might be enough to cause some companies to think twice before buying a close competitor. I'm Tara LaChapelle. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. Just before 6:39 on Wall Street, it's time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
China's coronavirus and global warming. There is a link. One of the deadliest epidemics in decades has dented industrial activity in China, and it turns out that has cut carbon dioxide emissions by about 100 million metric tons, close to what Chile emits in a year. A new analysis by the climate nonprofit Carbon Brief found the widespread impact of the virus, including travel restrictions, longer holidays, and lower economic activity, means that neither industrial output nor energy demand has recovered from the usual lull around the Chinese New Year. Compared to the same period in 2019, China emitted 400 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. This year's figure is likely closer to 300 million metric tons. Coal consumption also has yet to recover from its usual holiday breather. A month before the Lunar New Year, burning of the dirtiest fossil fuel was in line with previous year's rates. Since then, it's fallen to a 4-year low, according to the analysis. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
All right, thanks, Bob. Coming up today, we get earnings from Norwegian Cruise Line as the coronavirus outbreak hurts demand for cruise bookings. Here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Unlike rivals Carnival and Royal Caribbean, Norwegian has relatively low exposure to China, according to analysts at Berenberg. Still, the firm says Norwegian can't completely escape the virus impact on the global cruise industry due to widespread media coverage. Analysts surveyed by Bloomberg are forecasting a quarterly profit of 70 cents a share, a penny above Norwegian's own guidance. Sales have seen rising 3.3% from a year ago, thanks in part to a 3.6% increase in capacity. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Larry, thanks. Finally, Victoria's Secret is planning to go private. Bloomberg News has learned L Brands is near a deal to sell control of the lingerie chain to private equity firm Sycamore Partners in a deal that would value Victoria's Secret around $1.1 billion. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/O.
I've got my own place now, Money. My parents put up the 10% security. And when I keep up my repayments, they get it back with interest in 5 years from Barclays. And now we can do whatever we want. Right, Dave? We don't have to tiptoe up the stairs. I can paint the living room purple. Don't look at me like that, Money. It's my house. Barclays Family Springboard Mortgage. Make money work for you.
Your home may be repossessed if more repayments are missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
The B&Q 3-for-2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3-for-2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3-for-2 it. Excludes white and ready mixed trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
Winter joggers of London. It's chilly. Your legs are caked in mud and your nose is running faster than you. Then, get that heating on. You deserve it. Thanks to Hive Active Heating, you can control your heating wherever you are with a tap of the app, which could save you up to £120 a year by never having to heat an empty home. Buy today and get a free Amazon Echo Dot. Search Hive Heating. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Good book. Refreshing drink. 6 degrees outside. 35 in here. This really is the life.
Could the gentleman in aisle 2 please remove himself from the hot tub?
Oh, so much for try before you buy.
Well, at Ford, you can. Test drive and purchase any new Ford car or commercial vehicle this February, and we'll give you an additional £500 off the recommended retail price. Search Ford Test Drive Promotion. Retail and small business customers only. Contract and register by 29th of February 2020 at participating Ford dealers. Excludes Ford scrappage.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
To a network of news and financial information 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg made his Democratic presidential debate debut last night in Las Vegas, as Jim Roop reports.
A wild night for sure. It was contentious, aggressive, attacking, in some cases to a degree mean-spirited. Michael Bloomberg's first debate, as forecast, every candidate had their turn at arm-punching the former New York mayor, from his tax returns that have not yet been released to his non-disclosure agreements with women who he said just didn't like his jokes. That brought out the ire of Senator Elizabeth Warren, and it just wasn't all about Bloomberg. It was Buttigieg versus Klobuchar, just about everyone against Sanders. There was an agreement on climate change, but not how to stop it. Agreement on beating Donald Trump, but not how to do it. At the Democratic debate in Las Vegas, I'm Jim Roop.
2 elderly passengers taken off the quarantine cruise ship Diamond Princess because they were infected with the COVID-19 coronavirus have died. This as new cases of the virus continue to drop in China. No verdict yet in Harvey Weinstein's rape trial. Deliberations continuing for a third day. Stock futures down slightly. I'm Michael Toscano.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the head count?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow at 6:47 on Wall Street. Futures are lower this morning. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bailey Lipschultz. Bailey, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. As you said, stocks are edging lower after the latest batch of earnings. The Dow is down 40 points, S&P lower by 4, with the Nasdaq off 13 points. U.S. 10-year yield is at 1.54%. Shanghai rose 1.8% overnight, and European markets are broadly trading lower, led by losses in Spain. Back in the U.S. on the economic front, at 8:30, initial jobless claims in Philly business outlook, and at 10 o'clock, the leading index. After earnings, Zillow was moving higher after fourth quarter results beat estimates. Boston Beer's 2020 guidance missed expectations, and Synopsys first quarter earnings topped Wall Street's targets. Regarding deals, the Japanese owner of 7-Eleven is said to be in talks to acquire Marathon Speedway for about $22 billion, and Dow Jones reported that Victoria's Secret will go private for $1.1 billion. In other news, Apple is considering loosening restrictions on rival iPhone and music apps. Wrapping things up, AMD cut to equal weight at Wells Fargo. Salesforce's price target was raised to a street high 230 at RBC, and Anheuser-Busch was cut to underweight over at JP Morgan. Live from the First Word Breaking News Desk, I'm Bailey Lipschultz. Karen?
All right, Bailey, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now with more on what's going on around the world, here's Michael Barr. Michael.
Karen, thank you very much. Police in New Orleans say a woman was struck and killed by a parade float as the city celebrated Mardi Gras. News outlets report witnesses say the woman tried to cross between a tandem float, which has two sections that are connected in the middle. She reportedly tripped over the hitch connecting the two sections and was run over by the back half of the float. The coronavirus death continues to climb in toll. The Bloomberg John Tucker has more in this live report.
And Michael, the global death toll has climbed to over 2,100. But in Hubei province, that's the center of the outbreak, the number of confirmed cases actually dropped for the first time. That's after the province once again changed the way it diagnoses the illness. Meantime, South Korea reported its first fatality from the outbreak after cases there doubled overnight. Japan confirmed 2 deaths from a quarantine cruise ship, and Iran reported 3 more cases a day after confirming 2 people had died from the outbreak. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Michael.
John, thank you very much, sir. In the NHL, the Rangers won, the Islanders lost, the Bruins won in overtime. The NBA resumes tonight after the All-Star break. There's a new proposal from the NFL to add 2 more teams to the playoff format. The plan calls for 7 teams from each conference to make the postseason, and only the top seeds would receive buys. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're at 6:50 on Wall Street, and it is the morning after possibly the most fierce debate yet for the Democrats. Running for president this year, the candidate on the receiving end of the vast majority of the attacks was Michael Bloomberg.
Mr. Bloomberg had policies in New York City of stop and frisk.
The policy was abhorrent, and it was, in fact, a violation of every right people have.
He has gotten some number of women, dozens, who knows, to sign non-disclosure agreements.
Bernie Sanders and Mike Bloomberg, the 2 most polarizing figures on this stage.
I think it's great you got a lot of money, but I think you've got to come forward with your tax returns.
The number of pages will probably be the thousands of pages. I can't go to TurboTax.
And Michael Bloomberg says he plans to release those tax returns in a few weeks. He says they're currently being prepared as fast as he can do it. For more on the debate, we welcome in Greg Valliere, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist at AGF Investments. Good morning, Greg. The headline on Bloomberg.com reads as follows: Bloomberg hammered, Warren shines, and Sanders dodges trouble. Does that basically sum up your takeaway as well?
I think so, Nathan. You've got to say, in my opinion at least, that the big takeaway was that Bernie Sanders went into this as the front runner, and he left as the front runner. And if he does stumble next Tuesday in the next debate, and if he wins Nevada, which I think is very likely this weekend, he's going to head into Super Tuesday, March 3rd, as clearly the front runner.
Where does that leave, then, the race for second place?
Well, I think that you've got to say Bloomberg, by nature of his resources, will still be okay, but he had a god-awful first hour last night. I thought his second hour wasn't bad. He talked policy, and he's very good on that. You could be charitable and say he had a lot of rust, and he wasn't quite prepared for this, but, second place is now a little more questionable. I think that Elizabeth Warren helped herself last night.
Let's talk a little bit more about Elizabeth Warren, because she has gotten a lot of the attention following this debate for some very sharp moments, particularly pointed at the former New York City mayor. Does this vault her back into a stronger position?
I think it keeps her alive to fight well past Super Tuesday. And I got to say, the other big takeaway is that this is increasingly looking like it could go right to Milwaukee in mid-July at the convention. And I'm not so sure there's going to be someone arriving there with a majority of delegates. Someone will have a plurality. But I think we could have a contested convention, and I wouldn't even rule out a brokered convention that could last several ballots.
Are you thinking a contested convention among the top four that we've mentioned so far, Sanders, Bloomberg, Biden, and Warren, or does it still include Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar?
Buttigieg has money, but I think he's faded a bit. I would see maybe 3 or 4 people going to Milwaukee thinking that they have a chance. I mean, if this dragged on and on, could the nearly unthinkable happen? Could they look at someone who hadn't run? Could they maybe pick somebody as a compromise candidate? There's a rich history in the last century or so of that happening in the U.S. In fact, in 1924, there were 103 ballots. The convention lasted over 2 weeks. I wouldn't predict that now, but I think Milwaukee's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's been a long time since we've seen a brokered convention of that sort. In the modern era, it's been almost unheard of. So what would a brokered convention mean for the Democratic Party and the prospects heading into the general election to face President Trump?
Yeah, to be very blunt, this would mean good things for Trump. I think if there is a brokered convention, one faction or the other will go home disappointed. If Bernie is denied the nomination, I think a lot of his supporters would stay at home in November. If, on the other hand, Bernie wins, I think a lot of moderates, people who like Bloomberg, people who like Biden, would be very dissatisfied. So that's the great advantage for Trump, that you could get a severe rift among the Democrats that would not heal by November.
Well, and I mean, we're seeing almost that rift within the centrist race between, among Biden and Buttigieg and now Michael Bloomberg. I mean, what is the prospect of a fracturing there?
I think you could see it there as well. Who was it? Obama said, and many have said, I say this frequently, the Democrats have formed a circular firing squad. And I think this does not do them any good. I think, again, it helps Trump. The other thing you've got to worry about is that if Bernie is the nominee, a lot of Democrats are worried about Senate races, House races, gubernatorial races. He could drag the whole ticket down.
What kind of pressure, then, does that put on people who might have qualms about a Sanders nomination to coalesce around someone, whether it's a Michael Bloomberg with all his resources or, someone who's been in the race quite a bit longer?
It's funny, Nathan. I've talked to people in the last few days, Democrats, who say, look, if we're going to lose to Trump anyway, let's go with the real deal. Let's go with someone like Bernie, who, of course, has a very radical agenda. I don't necessarily agree with that reasoning, but I think a lot of people may be deciding that he could beat Trump. I don't think he could, but I think a lot of Democrats think that in a debate, in a one-on-one, Bernie could hold his own.
Well, as far as Michael Bloomberg's performance, you mentioned that he did a lot better in the second hour than the first. What does that mean potentially for his prospects going forward in a muddled Democratic presidential race?
Well, I think over the weekend he's got to watch the tapes. He's got to rehearse more. He's got to prepare himself for another onslaught. I think he was caught off guard in the first hour. But again, when you get to policy issues, he's very good.
Is Joe Biden still a viable candidate?
Yeah, I think he still has a pulse rate. He showed energy last night, which is crucial because he hasn't frequently. He was okay, but you look at the Biden numbers, you look at the upcoming primaries, he's not going to do well this weekend in Nevada. He'll probably narrowly win South Carolina. But the big story on Super Tuesday, March 3rd, I think will be the biggest prize of all. That's California, and I think California is going to be won easily by Bernie.
That's interesting because the Biden campaign has put a lot of its prospects on doing well in Nevada and South Carolina. If, as you're suggesting, he does not do well in our last few seconds here, does that pretty much put him out of the race?
You would think so, and I think the major reason why, Nathan, is money. If Biden has two more disappointing results, his fundraising is going to dry up.
Greg Valliere, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist at AGF Investments. Always good getting your insights. Thanks again for being with us this morning on Bloomberg Daybreak. The morning after the 9th Democratic presidential debate aired last night on NBC. And we should mention that Michael Bloomberg, candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company, I should say, of Bloomberg Radio. Looking at the markets ahead of the open, S&P futures are lower by 7.5 points. Dow futures down 64. NASDAQ futures lower by 25 points. We will have more analysis of the markets and the debate last night on Bloomberg Surveillance straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Karen Moscow, I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
Influential.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds. For first-class fitting. For kicking your heels off. For overexcited kids. And pets. For thrills and spills. For a special welcome home. For up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Offers end Tuesday. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
Business is like a puzzle.
Can you make a call given the data?
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, Fight Night in Vegas as Democrats tear into each other, China cutting borrowing costs for corporate and household loans, and the dollar breaking out to the strongest level since 2017. From the Bloomberg Brokers Interactive Studio, hello,
please,
Thursday.
Lester, can I get in here, please? Lester, can I get in here, please?
Your Thursday morning price action. Equities down 0.2% on the S&P 500, down 7 points in the bond market. Set up as follows for Treasuries. Yields coming in 3 basis points to 154 on a 10-year. And in foreign exchange, Tom King,
foreign exchange, yeah.
The dollar, the strongest on the DXY since 2017.
So much to talk about. I watched every single minute of the coverage last night. I thought Lester Holt and NBC did just a great job of letting John. In all the history of these debates, nothing like it I've ever seen last night. It was stunningly interesting.
Look, I thought at times that the moderators lost control of the whole thing.
Oh, absolutely.
So we could disagree on that, but maybe that's what brought the fireworks, just letting it go.
Exactly, just letting it go. Right now, the yen lets go to a weaker Japanese yen. John, this is a jump condition outside 2 standard deviations. Lots of analysis, but the pros like Ibram Rabari, they go right back to flows of money out of Japan. Yen weaker as they go to safe haven.
112 handle at one point in today's session, 111.92. This off the back yesterday of a really big move on dollar yen. Machine orders in Japan, terrible, ugly. The outlook for the first quarter of this year, not much better. Tom, I'd also point you towards the Aussie dollar. Aussie dollar,
I missed that.
The lows of 09, the lowest level since 2009 on the Aussie. That's a great proxy for what's happening in China and for global growth too. And to be honest with you, it does not smell good.
And Lisa, curve flattening. It's subtle, but it's there.
Yeah, right now I'm looking at the 210 spread. It's the narrowest of the year, raising questions. Is this inconsistent with resilience that we're seeing in equity markets? A little weakness this morning, but still hanging in there despite some of the concerns with the coronavirus.
Much more of the markets still ahead. We turn to politics now and the debates in Nevada, where it really was fight night in Las Vegas.
Mike Bloomberg owns more wealth than the bottom 125 million Americans.
A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians.
He has not managed his city very, very well when he was there.
One candidate who wants to burn this party down and another candidate who wants to buy this party out.
The campaign memo from Mayor Bloomberg said this morning that the only way that we get a nominee is if we step aside for him.
I'm a New Yorker. I know how to take on an arrogant con man like Donald Trump that comes from New York.
Joining us now, Terry Haynes, Pangea Policy Advisory founder. Terry, we've got to talk about the founder, majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News, Mr. Michael Bloomberg. How tough was that night for him, Terry?
I think it was very tough for him, John, and I think the bottom line effect is that the Democratic race is likely more muddled and not clarified after Nevada, South Carolina, Super Tuesday. Remember the Bloomberg case, according to a staff memo found a couple of days ago, is that Sanders is the likely nominee unless Biden, Klobuchar, and Buttigieg drop out after Super Tuesday, make it Sanders versus Bloomberg. After that performance, that's much less likely to happen. Anyway, I'll stop there.
No, Terry, I'm wondering whether Michael Bloomberg's entrance actually ended up helping Bernie Sanders by taking some of the heat off him.
Lisa, that's an awfully good question, and I think the short answer is I think it did. Combination of two things. One is it does take heat off of him, and secondly, you have the people that I referred to in a note this morning as second-tier candidates. I mean, no disrespect. Warren, Klobuchar, Buttigieg all tore each other up in order to get a rung up the ladder and stay alive, and the combination of that with the deflation of Bloomberg, I think, really helped Sanders, yes.
Now, Terry, good morning. This is the third-tier radio guy talking to you right now. Terry, you and I have been, seen this before, the niceties of Kennedy, Nixon. You and I don't go back to Lincoln Douglas, but I guess that was fiery as well. Something changed last night. What was it?
I think what changed is that you have candidates that, the market perception, I think, and the general perception, political perception, was that this race was going to get clarified and candidates were going to drop out. And I think what changed last night is that that is much less likely to happen, as I just mentioned. The other thing that changed, I think, is that the other candidates were supposed to get the memo that the race was supposed to come down to a two-person battle between Sanders and Bloomberg, and they didn't get that memo. Instead, quite the opposite.
Terry, everything you've said just opens the door to Senator Sanders running away with this. And the question I'm going to ask now is what many people are thinking on Wall Street at the moment. When does this start to bleed into financial markets, Terry? When do we start to see that connection established with Senator Sanders and perhaps being the risk-off candidate for the people on the street?
I think that takes a while, actually, John. For a couple of reasons. One is that I think markets and the general public both are slow to catch up to this. Firstly, is that what happens is Super Tuesday doesn't clarify as much as it's supposed to because the delegates are proportional. It's not a winner-take-all situation. Secondly, the Super Tuesday states generally split between Sanders states like California and other ones, mostly in the South, where what I would call non-Bernies do a lot better, places like Texas, Virginia, North Carolina. So it's going to be quite a while before that clarifies. And if it clarifies in Sanders' direction, I think frankly that goes market positive because then it looks like Trump's likelier to win. But the longer this muddles, I think the longer it's a market negative on balance.
Terry Haynes, thank you so much. Appreciate it this morning with Pangea. Right now, we are thrilled to bring you a gentleman that some would say invented this. Ages ago, before Obama, before William Jefferson Clinton, there was a doctor from New York who was up in Vermont skiing at Sugarbush, and he said, I think I ought to reinvent presidential politics. Howard Dean went on to reinvent the Iowa caucus, and then he went on for leadership within his Democratic Party. Howard, we just got from Terry Haynes sort of a grizzled, strategy look from Washington. What did last night mean for the fabric of the Democratic Party, for the operatives, for the people in the states, people that have been Democratic through thick and thin? They haven't changed parties. They've always been Democratic. You mentioned the moderate Democrats. What did all this fireworks mean for them last night?
Well, first of all, thank you for the overinflated resume. Secondly, in all due respect to all the analysts, people from Washington usually have the last idea of what's going to happen. So let me tell you what I think is going to happen, which is very different. It's quite possible, although maybe won't happen, that all 6 of these candidates will go to Super Tuesday. That depends mostly on the finishes of Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. If they finish decently in Nevada and South Carolina, they're all going to Super Tuesday. Now, when you get to Super Tuesday, we have a rule that says if you don't get 15% of the vote, you get 0 delegates. That is going to winnow people out significantly. People are saying that Bernie's the front runner. I think that's or Buttigieg is the front runner. I think that's a mistake after 2 states that are mostly white and don't look anything like the Democratic Party. So I'm guessing we're going to have a shakeout, but I'm guessing all 6 of these candidates could go on and win the nomination, as we saw last night. I thought it was a fantastic debate.
What makes you think from the debate last night that all 6 could go on and win this, Howard?
Because they're all attractive, they all did well, they're all smart, and they all have their own different lanes.
Okay, well, let's talk about Mayor Bloomberg, because most people said he didn't have a good night. What did you see that suggests that he could go on and take the nomination?
Because he has so much money, he's all over the place, he's on the air. Yes, he didn't have as good a night as some of the others. It was his first debate. Everybody else has already been in 5 or 6 of them. So I don't think that's going to harm him greatly. He has to up his game. He knows that. But he's the one person up there who could come on as a novice and continue to do just fine. My guess is he meets the 15% threshold in a number of states on Super Tuesday and maybe even South Carolina.
Howard, what do you think of Pete Buttigieg's criticism of Bernie Sanders and his followers and saying that he has to take responsibility for some of the vitriol that is being thrown by the people who are commonly known as Bernie Bros?
I actually think it helped 2 people. One was Pete Buttigieg and the other was Bernie Sanders. That is an issue. There is a lot of resentment about that. I don't think that's anything close to the majority of Bernie Sanders. But that is going to be an issue in the campaign. Bernie now knows that, and he's going to have to do something about it, and I think he will.
Howard, one more question, and to get you off in your busy morning, I'm sure, in Democratic politics. If you put Hubert Humphrey up there last night, Scoop Jackson, frankly, if you put Hillary Clinton up there last night, where do they fit in right to left? Would they be the most right candidate up there? I mean, is that how far your party's shifted?
I think our party's shifting to the center. I think.
Oh, come on. I didn't hear that last night, Dr. Dean.
Well, you may not have, but I'll tell you what's on the ground. 5%, 5 congresspeople that we elected are significantly to the left of center. 35 are veterans serving from Oklahoma. So the voters are moving to the center.
Howard, I totally take your point. I didn't see that in John Farrell's Las Vegas last night.
I thought Buttigieg was clearly centrist. Klobuchar was centrist. Bloomberg wasn't able to get his message out, but I would guess that he was center to center right, probably the most conservative guy on the stage. Although Amy might have been the most conservative person on the stage.
Okay, Howard Dean, think we're going to have to leave it there just because of time. But Dr. Dean, thank you so much, former head of the Democratic National Committee as well. John, that gives you some of the idea here of the historical perspective of where the people of our childhood fit in last night.
I just hear a lot of heads buried firmly in the sand. Not the
I don't disagree with that.
That was not the debate that I watched last night.
And John, what's so important is they do this again Tuesday in Charleston. I didn't know that
and
until
if you
last
get
night.
another repeat of those 2 hours from last night, there's a guy in the White House with a big wide smile watching that play
out. No question. Ramesh Ponnuru for Bloomberg Opinion was great on that.
All right, well, let's get the news right now. We've got Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you, Lisa. Tom, John. 6 Democratic hopefuls were on stage for last night's Democratic presidential debate in Las Vegas. During the event on NBC, candidates took their shots at debate newcomer Mike Bloomberg. Senator Elizabeth Warren hammered the former New York mayor on a number of non-disclosure agreements in place with former female employees.
Non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
that?
Let me finish. How many is that?
None of them accused me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like the joke I told. And let me point. There's agreements between 2 parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them.
Meanwhile, Bloomberg shot back at attacks who tried to compare him to President Donald Trump.
I'm a philanthropist who didn't inherit his money, but made his money. And I'm spending that money to get rid of Donald Trump, the worst president we have ever had.
And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Rallying his base, President Trump, speaking to farmers in Bakersfield, California, touted his administration's new environmental rules, directing more of the state's water to big agriculture businesses, a policy opposed by climate activists.
From the beginning, the Trump administration has delivered for our great farmers. We love our farmers. Under the previous administration, net farm income plummeted by 20%, and under my administration, net farm income has increased by over 50%.
The president also spoke in Arizona. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Hey, Michael, thank you. That's the news. Here's your price action. Equity futures lower by a mild 6 points down, off by 0.2% of the S&P 500. From New York City this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Discover Cork with Aer Lingus when you fly from London from $55.99 each way as part of a return trip. Experience this vibrant city and head to the coast for authentic Irish seafood and stunning scenery. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at aerlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
The government and the NHS are prepared to deal with coronavirus. You can help too. The best way to protect yourself and others is to wash your hands with soap and water or use a sanitizer gel regularly throughout the day. Catch your cough or sneeze in a tissue, bin it, and wash your hands. If you have recently arrived back from specified areas, follow the returning traveller advice. Check the list of areas and find out more at nhs.uk/coronavirus.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 7:17 on Wall Street, and Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check of the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. Michael Bloomberg was attacked from all sides in last night's Democratic debate. Elizabeth Warren compared him with President Trump in his treatment of women, and Bernie Sanders slammed his attitude toward minorities. Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. South Korea has its first fatality from the coronavirus. That's after cases in the country more than doubled overnight to 82. Meantime, Japan confirmed 2 deaths from a quarantined cruise ship. China's banks cut borrowing costs for new corporate and household loans. The 1-year loan prime rate was reduced by 10 basis points. Bloomberg Economics expects it to slide another 30 basis points by year end. And the US economy won't grow 3% this year without a big infrastructure package and more tax cuts. That's according to President Trump's top economists. The Washington Post reports the White House economists expect GDP to rise 2.4% this year. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
Hannah, thank you. S&P futures down about 6 points. Dow futures down 51. NASDAQ futures down 18. The DAX in Germany is down 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 8/30 seconds, yield 1.53%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.3% or 16 cents at 53.45 a barrel, and COMEX gold is up 0.5% or $8 at 16.1970 an ounce. The euro 1.0795 against the dollar, British pound 1.2866, and the yen at 111.9. 992. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Thanks so much, Karen. I appreciate that. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios in New York, John Farrow, Tom Keene, Lisa Abramowitz. I don't want to do politics here. We just did a lot of that with Mr. Haynes and with Dr. Dean as well. 5 things you need to know. And let's just quickly go through the China update, which is we're not at pandemic yet, are we? But the names are there.
Well, the key distinction between epidemic and pandemic, of course, is how this spreads. Is it confined to a few communities, or does it spread around the world? So right now, purely an epidemic in the minds of many people still, but we're starting to see deaths in places like Japan, in places like South Korea. And if we start to see it spread more, Tom, maybe you do make that shift from characterizing this very, very tragic outbreak from an epidemic to calling it a pandemic.
And it's a fine line. From what I've learned, it's not like a clear definition.
No, but there's a question about Japan in particular, the cases doubling overnight, with a question of how they're handling it, especially with the cruise ship.
Huge, vicious.
And it's, the people getting increasingly concerned about that at a time when there already is economic weakness, which goes to your yen story, which is the reason why you're seeing a lot of flows out of the country.
We talked to Axel Weber after he talked to the Swiss media, the Swiss press as well, this morning. He was convivial and, as usual, always guarded about the future and that of the Union Bank of Switzerland. John, he circled back in every question to their dominance of wealth management. The only way you get bigger there is scale purchase. You wonder if that's the future.
So let me get this straight. He kept hammering wealth management, but they've just hired a guy who has little to no experience in wealth management.
He's an operations research guy, very successful, I guess, at ING. And they kept mentioning digital technology. I brought up JP Morgan and the technology lead the Americans have. But every question, Dr. Weber went back to wealth management dominance.
Core competencies, wealth management, investment banking, that's UBS.
Yeah, but where are the fees? I mean, David Rubenstein with Charles Schwab, equities, where's the profit there? Bonds had disappeared years ago, right?
That's the big question. With bonds, bond trading, it's fickle. There have been good times, there have been bad times. Stock trading, fickle. Yeah. But with wealth management, yes, it's a steady source of income, but there's a question of how steady it will be in a time of shrinking and pressing yields.
I've got to do our disclaimer. Bloomberg surveillance, and of course we know those of the real yield, which shows a profit every Friday at 1 p.m.
Shows a profit.
As well. Yen FX. Fortunately, John, you didn't go into yen at 106. Others did.
Dollar yen, 112. Big move. Dollar strength.
Weaker yen.
Weaker yen. Actually, interesting that we're getting this weaker yen dynamic off the back of bad data in Japan, because typically what you'd see is a lot of capital come home when things get bad. So it's an interesting dynamic that's playing out at the moment to see this weaker yen story, but against a backdrop of risk aversion around the Japanese economy.
And you got to wonder, like OECD kind of thing, Laurence Boone, these global, what's the global economic statistic going to be next time around?
Japan, recession. It's got to be. The data at the end of 2019 was terrible. The machine orders for December, ugly. Q1's not going to be much better. Germany stagnates at the end of 19, comes into 20, gets a smack round the face from China. It doesn't look good for the number 3 and number 4 economies in the world.
I will just say, with the yen, there is a sort of technical underpinning. There is data showing that funds have been buying the largest back-to-back purchases of debt, particularly in dollars and euros, since September 2018. And there is a suspicion that people are getting caught off sides here, sort of forced squeeze. But it is sort of raising a question. Why is this different, that the Bank of Japan is not believed to be able to support the yen, or willing to?
5 things you need to know audible. This from an important listener. Biscuit emails in from New Jersey and says, would you guys look at a small deal, $750 million, Popeyes Restaurant Brands International.
John Tucker's excited about this, isn't it?
Chicken. And it's, again, this is like,
John, I tried to buy some of this paper yesterday. It was sold out.
Yeah, I know you did.
Were you hungry?
No, but this is important. It's the yield frenzy of 2006 where people are fighting, John, to pick up 30 beeps.
The borrowing costs in America, investment grade, all-time lows. Borrowing costs in Europe, high yield, record lows, I believe around about 3 percentage points. It's a story we're seeing emerge again and again and again over the last couple of years.
What's interesting to me is it's happening despite the fact that you're seeing an increasing number of fallen angels in the United States, companies that have investment grade ratings.
Macy's.
Yeah, you've
Renault
got exactly
the last few weeks.
And they're getting downgraded to junk. This has been the big fear, the sort of big mass downgrade of the BBB universe. The price action, non-existent pretty much.
And what's so important is the roadshow for the Popeye junk bonds. You get the MVP bundle, bonafide, chicken mixed, 5 biscuits, and 2 large sides.
How much is that?
John Tucker?
I don't know. It clicks in like $20. It's a big order.
$20.
You know, it's a 20 order for that as well. We thank Pop. Thank you, Biscuit, for sending that in today. Let us go. We haven't talked football. I got an email in yesterday from Anthony who said, please talk more football.
Is that what he said?
Soccer. Yeah, he said talk more soccer. And John, what's it like for a British team to go to Leipzig? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, but I think Red Bull went to Spurs.
Oh, they went to Spurs. I didn't know that.
I think that was in London.
But it's like is it a tension when is there like a regional tension?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. No, I don't think there's that regional tension. Not at the club level. There is certainly at the national level between Germany and say England. But at the club level, it's just a great atmosphere, Tom, to get 2 teams in Europe facing off with each other. Especially some of the German teams. Actually, Dortmund have got a fantastic atmosphere over in Germany. So there's some really good ground to go and play football. 6
things you need to know. Let's do it in 20 seconds. Morgan Stanley, we just talked about UBS, is buying E-Trade Financial 13 billion large. That from the Dow Jones Newswire as well. John, not widely anticipated, but there's James Gorman again, as we spoke in Davos, being opportunistic.
Morgan Stanley shares down more than 2% on this news. Actually, down more than 3% on this news.
Morgan Stanley buying E-Trade. Stay with us. We'll have much more. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
Suffering from house harassment? At Wix, there's 15% off tiles and flooring, so maybe give the downstairs loo a go. Ends Monday. Exclusions apply.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella. Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday, the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We are live on Bloomberg Radio, where equity futures drop around about 0.2%, off by 7 points on the S&P 500. In the bond market, Treasury yields coming in 3 basis points to 154. And in foreign exchange, the dollar, the DXY, the strongest since 2017. Euro dollar coming down another 1/10%. The headline of the morning, though, coming just moments ago, Tom Keene, the Morgan Stanley is to buy E-Trade for $13 billion. That, the biggest deal for a major Wall Street firm since the financial crisis.
Interesting, and it really goes back to James Gorman and Davos and just talk, your rude questions to him about, acquisitions and scale and that. They get immediate scale, but with someone very tiny. To give you an idea, John, divide it by 5. Schwab, 20,000 employees, E-Trade, 4,000, and revenue pans out about the same, 10 billion-ish revenue versus 2.7. So it's basically 1/4, 1/5 the size of Schwab, so it's something small they can buy, and it's not even a bolt-on. I wouldn't call it a bolt-on. You wonder, they're going to go in there with the Morgan Stanley Young Turks and blow it up.
We could discuss the strategy in just a moment. It's confirmed by Morgan Stanley there. This was first brought out by the Wall Street Journal. Confirmed deal for $58.74 a share. This is a stock that closed at $44.93 just in yesterday's session. We've been talking about these kind of deals over the last year or so, the likes of Schwab getting together with TD Ameritrade, Tom, and the likes of E-Trade needed a dance partner.
There's no
now
profit.
they got a big dance
There's
partner.
no profit. And David Rubenstein, in his conversation with Charles Schwab, they went right to it. They're so desperate, they're doing fractional shares like Motif is doing, where you don't buy 1 share of Amazon. A guy like me steps in big and I buy 0.15 shares of Tesla.
Yeah, so what does Morgan Stanley get for
I
the deal?
did that at 960.
I agree with you. I know what you've been up to with your all-cash portfolio. I just want to get to what they're getting. What they're getting for $13 billion. And this is what they're getting. They're getting 5 million retail customers, according to the Wall Street Journal, $360 billion in assets. And they get an online bank and cheap deposits. This coming from the Journal this morning, those numbers. And that's the story here, really, isn't it? What they get for the $13 billion, and they get a fair bit.
It's interesting when you compare Morgan Stanley with Goldman Sachs. Morgan Stanley shares, you should note, down in pre-market trading 3.7%. But Goldman Sachs really trying to get into the consumer. And this is a new way to get into the consumer with E-Trade catering very much to retail investors. It's a new kind of arm. So it's a different way of getting into that side of things. Perhaps there's an advisory business or other ways they can spin it out, right, as far as what Morgan Stanley can do with it. But it's easy access to a huge group of individuals who are considered to be the next phase of growth for a lot of the big banks.
But to UBS, and what Axel Weber said, wealth management, there's different phrases for that. They change the phrase every 10 years, but it's high net worth or whatever you want to call it. What do you call E-Trade? Low net worth? Is that what they're buying here?
Well, it's retail, Tom, isn't it? 5 million
Morgan
customers.
Stanley's retail, right?
Some of it.
Some of it. Wealth management. UBS, same way. What's a minimum account you need at these firms versus the E-Trades or Schwab's? And the answer is the number's higher than a lot of people.
We'll get into that in just a moment. A little bit later in the program, Alison Williams, Bloomberg Intelligence, Global Investment Banks and Asset Managers Senior Analyst, will be joining us a little bit later in the program. Turning to the broader market now with Priya Misra, TD Securities Head of Global Race Strategy. She joins us on the phone, I'm pleased to say. Priya, we've talked so much about the Teflon S&P 500. You can throw anything at it and it does not break. What are your conversations with clients at the moment sound like?
So I think, there's this tension between global growth that, there's this question about what the impact of coronavirus is, but then there's also the expectation of more stimulus. And we really haven't seen U.S. data crack. And so I think the assumption is that the economy is okay, that the Fed is not going to spoil the party. They're not about to hike anytime soon, and therefore risk assets are good to go. Plus, you have this asset growth of the Fed balance sheet, which a lot of people do think is sort of QE, even though I would argue it's not QE. So I think risk assets have been solid, but I'm going to be a little cautionary here. I mean, I think it's too early to tell that the coronavirus is really behind us, that all the risks have been priced in. I think you have 800 million people on travel restrictions. So as I think the WHO brought up, how big is the iceberg? We really don't know. I'm nervous about global growth here, and I think that the euro is sort of reflecting some of that. I think ultimately it just means that the Fed stays on hold for much longer, and that risk assets may be looking a little toppy here.
Brilliant. We need something new to break the mood. We've got comfortable. In fact, I'd say we've got a high tolerance level for weak corporate guidance for Q1. We've probably got a high tolerance level based on the price action we've seen over the last couple of weeks for weak data out of places like Europe and across Asia as well. Last year, we got comfortable with a tug of war between weak manufacturing and resilient services. Do you think that we need to see things start to cut the other way? Weaker services, lose faith in the policymaker to really disrupt this regime in a material way?
Yes, no, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I think the assumption now is that this is a temporary shock, that it's a modest shock, and that services will continue to be strong. I think for what can affect services, I'm really looking at the business sector. So business investment has been weak now for the last 2 years. I actually think it's going to stay weak as we're heading into this uncertainty around the election too. But does the business investment weakness spill over into hiring? That's what's going to affect the service sector. Does the corporate sector say, maybe we don't need to hire until we figure out what happens with this virus, what happens to the election? We've got pretty polarizing candidates on both sides. And so if you see any impact on hiring, that's what I'm watching for. It's not an early read. The labor market's always a lagging indicator. But I think if you see that starting to crack even a little bit, I think this story that this is just a transitory impact on manufacturing, I think that comes into question. And I think we can all agree that policymakers on the monetary policy front are certainly pushing on a string. So I don't think the Fed, then really there will be all that much faith that the Fed taking rates a little bit lower will be enough to make services go up.
So let's talk about the economic backdrop and how it bleeds into markets. We're seeing today the yield curve, the gap between 2- and 10-year Treasury yields fall to the lowest of the year. And I'm wondering, is this a reflection of some of the worries that you're talking about, that you're looking for in terms of deciphering whether or not the economic weakness is really transitory?
Right. I think what the rates market is telling you with the flattening is that the U.S. economy so far looks okay, and so the Fed doesn't need to come in and add accommodation. And the minutes yesterday sort of reflected that. Now, they are dated, but I think we're not hearing from Fed officials that they need to respond. Meanwhile, long-end rates, which I would argue Treasury rates versus bonds versus JGBs, they're reflecting the global growth concern. Now, at some point, the flatter yield curve is going to, I think, bleed through not just into Fed concerns, but also the equity market, because it is a signal of slowing growth. It's a signal that the Fed may not be easy enough.
Okay, Priya Misra, thank you so much with TD Ameritrade right now. Greatly appreciate that this morning. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university in the latest U.S. News and World Report college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. Just try to picture what's going on here. This is how it played out, literally, in an operating room in Britain. While the patient played the violin, doctors were simultaneously removing a tumor from 53-year-old Dagmar Turner's brain. King's College Hospital says the surgery was needed to preserve vital areas of her brain, and it was important that she played during surgery so they could monitor her movement and coordination. Turner was diagnosed back in 2013 after having a seizure during a symphony. She opted for surgery last year when the tumor grew and became more aggressive. They're setting up a new delivery service at Yale University.
Every time it rains, and it's from heaven.
Students will be able to order small items using an app and have them delivered by drone in a padded envelope to various drop spots around campus.
You'll find your fortune falling all over town.
Now, I hope they've given this some thought. I know what I'd be tempted to do if I saw a package of candy fall out of the sky in front of me.
Trade them for a package of sunshine and ravioli. Macaroni.
Senior Jason Liu came up with the idea from a class project, and his startup won a $150,000 grant from a California-based investor. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bobo. And I can just see a drone incoming to Durfee up there at New Haven. Right now with the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. It was fight night in Las Vegas. 6 Democratic presidential candidates took jabs at each other on the debate stage. The newcomer to the debates, former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, faced the brunt of the attacks from the other candidates, Senator Elizabeth Warren.
We are not going to beat Donald Trump with a man who has who knows how many non-disclosure agreements and the drip, drip, drip of stories of women saying they have been harassed and discriminated against. That's not what we do as Democrats.
Meanwhile, Bloomberg, when pressed about releasing his tax returns.
We're releasing them. They'll be out in a few weeks, and that's just as fast as I can do it. Remember, I only entered into this race 10 weeks ago. All of my associates here have been at this for a couple of years.
We should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Today is sentencing day for President Trump's longtime friend and political confidant, Roger Stone. He was convicted in November of obstructing justice, witness tampering, and lying to Congress. A top Pentagon official announced that he would be leaving his post after saying he was pushed out by Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and the Trump administration. Undersecretary of Defense John Rood was considered a follower of former Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, who also resigned. German Chancellor Angela Merkel vowed decisive action to combat racism after 11 people were killed in shootings last night in a town near Frankfurt in what she said appeared to be a right-wing extremist attack by a lone gunman. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Hey, Michael, thank you. Michael Barr, thank you very much. Guys, when was the last time we talked about a big M&A deal coming from Wall Street?
Scale.
And a major player?
You go down the income statements, John, it's just real simple. All you got to do is look at the revenue line for every one of these companies. It's not like Morgan Stanley. It's not like the others. The margins are phenomenal on the little bit they're making on revenue. There's no revenue growth.
Just moments ago, Morgan Stanley confirming a deal to buy E-Trade for $58.74 a share. The share was halted in the pre-market. I understand it will resume trading at 8 Eastern. Ahead of that, up a monster 24% following the deal.
John, you raised an interesting point. What is Morgan Stanley getting? And I was just digging through some of the reporting, and E-Trade's crown jewel, this according to the Dow Jones, is their business of managing the stock that employees at hundreds of companies receive as part of their pay. And the idea here is, as the shares are locked up for a while, then come up for actually being liquidated, E-Trade can roll these corporate customers into some of their brokerage accounts. And that's sort of the idea. And the idea is that Morgan Stanley has a competing business. This could consolidate it. But this would basically give Morgan Stanley more than 4,000 corporate customers and $580 billion of stock held on their behalf. That's a big chunk of money.
Some staggering numbers. Alison Williams will be joining us very shortly to weigh in on that of Bloomberg Intelligence. Look out for that conversation coming up right here on Bloomberg Radio. For the broader market, equity futures down 0.2%. We're off by 7 points on the S&P 500. In the bond market, Tom, Treasury yields down 3 basis points to 154 on a US 10-year.
John, are we going to get 100 on DXY?
We're close to it.
We're right there. But this is the blended basket of currencies, very euro-based.
99, the high 99.91. That was the high of the session so far. Yeah. We're close enough, aren't we? Much more on the foreign exchange dollar story. The dollar, the strongest since 2017. From New York City, good morning. This is Bloomberg.
With a Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. A Japanese virologist says if the Tokyo Olympics were held tomorrow, the games probably couldn't be held because of the fast-spreading coronavirus from Wuhan, China. Dr. Hitoshi Oshitani says right now we don't have an effective strategy, and I think it may be difficult to have the Olympics. He is more hopeful about the outlook just over 5 months from now when the games are scheduled to open on July 24th. He says he was most concerned about a Wuhan type of outbreak taking place in Africa or other parts of Asia and having cases imported into Japan. Meanwhile, President Trump was asked whether he will attend the Olympic Games in Tokyo.
I was invited by Prime Minister Abe, and we'll make that determination. We haven't made it yet, but we might.
The president spoke in Los Angeles as he met with organizers of the 2028 Olympic Games in L.A. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save. Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Publicly available out of contract, non-promotional pricing. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL. Every journey matters.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and as we've been reporting, Morgan Stanley has entered into a definitive agreement to buy E-Trade in an all-stock transaction valued at about $13 billion. E-Trade shares are up 24% in early trading. Morgan Stanley's down 3.5%. U.S. stock index futures are edging lower as investors pore over the latest reports about the spread of the coronavirus beyond China and a batch of lackluster corporate earnings. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are down 7 points. Dow futures down 57. NASDAQ futures down 24. The DAX in Germany's down 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 8/30 seconds, yield 1.53%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.9% or 49 cents at $53.78 a barrel. And COMEX gold up 0.5% or $8.60 at $16.20.40 an ounce. The euro 1.0791 against the dollar. British pound 1.2859. and the yen is at 111.99. Watching shares of Six Flags Entertainment down more than 17% this morning. It reported a fourth quarter loss that missed the lowest estimate of analysts we surveyed, and it cut its quarterly dividend to 25 cents a share from 83 cents. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Gold, $16.20 the ounce. One of the blurs here, and I know John suffers this as well with his many properties, is it's just a grind every day. And there are moments, John, through the year where time just stops. I was out one early morning on the TV set with the 5 or 6 newspapers I had. I had my Drambuie in my hand, and I was, looking through the papers. And there, I'm going to say in the Journal, I turned the page, full page discount brokerage, 0 commission. Okay, big deal. Then I turn the next page, another firm, full thun, 0 commission. Even a third page, there was one moment where there were 3 full-page ads in the Journal over the complete giveaway that has become discount brokerage, and I guess that's what we see with E-Trade mating with a very larger Morgan Stanley today.
For $13 billion, and I'm pleased to say that joining us to discuss is Alison Williams, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Analyst. So Alison, let's discuss. What does Mr. Gorman get for $13 billion?
So I think he gets an acceleration in the strategy that they announced with their most recent earnings, which they, had sort of talked about the next leg of the strategy, the next leg of growth. They gave us these improved targets everyone was very excited about, and they talked about, mass affluent being the next leg. I don't think that it was anticipated that they would get there through this accelerated fashion. And I would say a pretty healthy premium. And so I guess we're going to want to look into a little bit more of what exactly the deal economics are. What are the assumptions that they're factoring in to pay this price?
We've seen some deals in this space, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab. Now we're seeing it with some of the bigger players on Wall Street. Alison, a question that might be asked, we look to Goldman. Are they going to look at retail brokerages too? What's going on?
I mean, they might. Goldman has historically, if we look over the very long history of Goldman, they have generally preferred to build versus buy. However, they have been relatively active, at least in the asset management space. So they've done a fair amount of things there. So they've grown organically, but also tacked on some acquisitions, both gaining some technology expertise as well as some assets. And they too, through their Marcus, are sort of expanding their customer base as well.
Alison, I look at the fancy math you'll dive into as a grizzled pro. The idea of the weighted average cost of capital, no, Pat. You can look at enterprise value or just return on invested capital. E-Trade's really doing nothing wrong. It's just a revenue story, isn't it? So they give up the ghost. They go to Morgan Stanley. How does Morgan Stanley boost revenue in this niche industry?
So my guess is a couple of things, one of which is likely lending to these customers. That's something that Morgan Stanley has gotten bigger in recent years, also growing on the deposit side. The downside of this business, right, is the zero pricing that we've seen on commission. So
there's no revenue growth. It's flat as a pancake. Everything else is gorgeous.
Well, they're not making it in commissions, but they can make it in other ways. In fact, Dave Ritter, who covers E-Trade, just had a strong call talking about the fact that he expected that they were actually going to surprise on the revenue side, but which is sort of predicated on whatever your view of the macro environment, right? So his point is if investors start going more into cash, E-Trade's margin could surprise on the upside.
I know about that.
Yeah, the triple leverage cash. In fact, Morgan Stanley is buying E-Trade for $58.74 a share, and you were crunching the numbers as soon as you walked in to say that this is more than a 30% premium to where the shares traded at the close yesterday. There is a question about the customer of E-Trade. Tom was asking this before, and it's a good question. How lucrative... You did a good job. It was good. I'm wondering, the idea of catering to millionaires and billionaires, very lucrative. We're seeing that certainly with UBS, with Deutsche Bank, even with DWS and Morgan Stanley. There's a question about the E-Trade customer and how lucrative they are to manage their money.
Well, I think So companies like Morgan Stanley have, they started on the ultra high end. They actually, Morgan Stanley, with their acquisition of Smith Barney, sort of expanded a wider net, and now this is sort of taking another leg to, I guess, a broader sort of customer. So it's not going to be the same balances and that same math as sort of the very higher end, as you point out. But as I said, there are sort of other ways that you could look at holistically at the customer in terms of cross-sell.
You sound like Purcell and Dean Witter a million years ago. How are you going to... Come on, we did cross-sell. It went down in flames 20 years ago. John, did they do cross-sell in Europe, in London?
I'm sure they did at some point, Tom.
I mean, come on, it's a pure play. There's no revenue growth, whether it's Charles Schwab or Fidelity. Abby Johnson's on this day after day. Where do you see in your wonderful world-class team, where do they develop single-digit nominal GDP revenue growth?
Well, that's the $1 million question, right? Because especially in today's environment, with the macros, right? So we have a stock market that's very strong, that's helping them. So that's one way that you help revenue growth, is you just get sort of this free help from the market.
Absolutely.
But on the negative side of things, you have an inverted yield curve. You have things like the coronavirus. You have things like other geopolitical risks weighing that sort of leave us worried about the interest rate environment for some time. So these are things that all banks have to fight.
Alison, great to catch up with you. Alison Williams there of Bloomberg Intelligence.
Your report's going to be fascinating. I can't wait to see what you say on this.
I'm thinking back to your days on Wall Street, cross-selling.
I remember going into a mall once. I'll blame it on Dean Witter. I can't remember.
Still a thing, of course.
And the guy's like between a shoe store, a sneaker store, and a mattress store. And I don't know what he was moving.
What do you reckon Fidelity are thinking this morning as James Gorman comes out?
John, that's the money question.
We're coming for you.
Well, James Gorman saying we'll take on Schwab, we'll take on Fidelity.
What does Goldman say? I mean, with their retail effort. Interesting. Alison Williams, thank you. Worldwide, -7. Bloomberg surveillance. Stay with us.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Publicly available out of contract, non-promotional pricing. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds. For first-class fitting. For kicking your heels off. For overexcited kids. And pets. For thrills and spills. For a special welcome home. For up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Offers end Tuesday. Terms and conditions apply.
This is the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time he hops on a bus. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Got the popcorn, Sergey?
Oh, yeah.
Now, what shall we watch?
Ooh, an action film.
Where are we, Sergey?
We're in the car chase.
Oh, well, patch up. I need more leg room. Ooh, what does this button do? Heated seats?
No.
Eject the seat! Enjoy endless adventures with 2-for-1 cinema tickets from Meerkat Movies when you buy through Compare the Market.
Qualifying purchases Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Participating cinemas, 2 standard tickets only. Cheapest ticket free. T's and C's apply.
Do you go on the same holiday every year? To the same country, in the same hotel, with the same sea view? Visit the same ancient monuments, lay by the same dolphin-shaped pool, meet the same Barrys and Sandras, and wear the same Hawaiian shirt that you'd never wear at home? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa.
Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway. We're with you.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
American economic power and future depends on trade deals.
In many of these countries, we've still seen people struggling.
Finance.
We're in this vortex of uncertainty. These big companies, they just sometimes lack focus.
Investment.
The markets have become a little bit too addicted to the Fed.
Timing the market is just so difficult.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene with Lisa Abramowitz. Thrilled you're with us this morning. I'm looking at that acclaimed Amber Top Go screen, and it is something. I mean, John, we talked a lot of politics in the last hour. Bloomberg hammered Warren Shines is the Bloomberg News article on the politics. We got a little bit of other news. Morgan Stanley to buy E-Trade for $13 gazillion, all stock deal. And then you've got the market action as well. I mean, yen is a story.
The founder, majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent company of Bloomberg News, took it from all sides, didn't he? Well, you mentioned it early, so let's get it in early, shall we? Took it from all sides last night.
We do the disclaimer, but I'll tell you, I'm really proud. I thought Craig Gordon really wrote a lovely article out of Las Vegas in the heat of it last night, summarizing the debate. And I thought the New York Post did a great job. It looked like Mike had been in, what we call in hockey a major fight, which is 5 minutes each for fighting. Go in, get your stitches, and move on.
It took a lot of hits.
Got better. Full disclosure, and of course we do mention the disclaimer, but I thought Mike improved through the debate from what was a very shaky start.
Look, 2 hours, and they all tore each other to pieces.
They did.
And I was watching the thing play out last night, and I just thought one thing, that was a president sitting in the White House quite happy about what was playing out.
Absolutely. For our international audience, Lisa, at the end of the debate, the Midwest back and forth of Klobuchar to the north of the Midwest, and Mr. Buttigieg to the south of the Midwest, South Bend. Rachel from Lafayette emailed me in. She listens in Western Indiana, and she noted how those two really went at it at the end of it.
Which raises a question about the alliances being struck within the Democratic Party, because it had been thought that Klobuchar and Buttigieg were sort of on the same page.
That didn't,
No, and then all of a sudden you've got Warren supporting Klobuchar. It was a very interesting debate to watch.
We're going to do the market here. John, I got to get this out of the way. Yen is unique. It's a standard deviation jump condition. Do you have a why on why yen has weakened?
So we saw some weakness yesterday. It all started yesterday when dollar yen broke out, largely off the back of some data in Japan. The machine orders really not pretty for the month of December, and the outlook not a whole lot better. Japan's in a tough spot, and I think recession is very much on the cards. Some of it inflicted by themselves with a sales tax hike. The rest of it, China and Asia, is looking soft in Q1.
Before I bring in our guest, a headline out. This is widely expected. Mr. Wexner at L Brands will step down as chairman and CEO, and that has been a rocky 180 days for Mr. Wexner, of course, wrapped up in the late Mr. Epstein scandal as well. John, our next guest is great for writing half-sentence headlines that get your BTIG attention.
Is this a compliment or not?
Why? Here's the reason why Tesla went up. Are you ready?
Okay.
Why? Because the public is buying. I mean, you don't need any more introduction than that.
He's here to talk about his former boss at UBS, Julian Emmanuel, BTIG Chief Equity and Derivatives Strategist.
Who's walking out the door right now.
Good morning.
Disclaimers everywhere, John.
So when you were at Brasserie Lip there, I've been there many times in Zurich down the street. You and Mr. Amati were there. You know, what's the body language you see on your former employer?
Well, look, it has been a difficult decade, let's say, to be a European bank. The question is, it's not just specific to that company. It's, are you going to get any relief from these just unremitting headwinds with regard to the zero interest rate environment? We would actually argue that there is a possibility you're going to get leadership transition in Germany. If you looked at the debate stage last night, we know one thing: our deficit. I'm a trillion bid. It's going to expand.
Torsten Slok yesterday was saying at Deutsche Bank or 2 days ago with a GDP slowdown, the deficit, I believe, was Torsten could go up to $2 trillion. Julian, I don't want to get you in trouble with your general counsel at BTIG, but you brought up a really important point, and this goes to the heart of your matter and equity strategy. With the dampening that's out there, the zero bound that's out there, is scale the only solution for corporations worldwide? M&A combinations, is that the only path forward on the revenue side?
Well, it's not just the revenue side. It's this, the speed of innovation and the changing landscape, along with our view that when you specifically look at this transaction in the financial industry, that the retail investor is likely to become an ever more important factor as millennials inherit the greatest wealth transfer of all time, and they're underinvested chronically. So the answer is yes, it makes sense. It certainly makes sense in the financial industry.
Can I just sort of take you a little bit further into the realm of getting into trouble?
Oh, you are.
I won't mention UBS. Just the culture difference of working at a Swiss bank versus a US firm. How stark is that still in 2020, Julian?
Well, again, a lot of this has to do with, if you think about the margin pressure of a European bank and the tension, the extra tension that you're under in this zero interest rate environment, as opposed to this notion that, the Fed, the U.S. Fed, is the only central bank to successfully escape zero interest rates and to give a margin of profitability back to U.S. banks.
You're answering these rude questions so well. I think you could be a seventh debater in Charleston.
I'm just waiting for him to tell me that he signed an NDA and he can't talk about what happened at UPS.
Watch yourself, then we'll have a real disclaimer. Continue,
Julian, fantastic to have you with us. Let's talk about this Teflon S&P 500, shall we? What breaks the mood? What breaks this regime? I always think it's important not to talk about where we think things should or shouldn't be, but think about where we are, what investors are responding to, and perhaps more importantly, what they are not responding to right now. What's your take on those kind of themes at the moment?
Well, Tom set the table perfectly. Our view is that particularly when you look at year to date and specifically the month of February, you are seeing something that you haven't seen in several years, and that is the public has become an engaged buyer of stocks, whether they're electric vehicle makers or, technology or what have you. The public is back in. So from where we stand, you're at a very sort of unique juncture where you've shaken off a lot of the coronavirus and the political concerns because the public is a buyer. I think a lot of, at least the near term, is how the flow of news goes, and does that cause the public to have less of an appetite over the next 4 to 6 weeks in terms of buying stock. We think long term, actually, the key to the public buying stocks and the key to moving markets higher is something, we've all talked about for a number of months, in that the psychology of higher yields starts to coalesce. And to that end, when you look at yesterday's numbers, to see PPI come in very, very hot, whether it's explained away or not, tells you the environment may be changing.
I want to pick up on that because today you're seeing a rally resume in bonds, and you have seen a rally pretty consistently, with yesterday perhaps a slight pause in that. Do you think the story being told in bond markets right now is incongruent with the story being told in stocks?
It's a massive disconnect. There's no question about it. And when we look at it, it was a disconnect last year, and it's certainly a disconnect on the sector level in the equity markets, with this incredible outperformance in utilities, for one. And when you think about the evolution of last year, there was a time in September when we made what we think is actually going to be a defensible global yield low, is that the story came together, but the coronavirus has sort of put sand in the wheels.
How long can this divergence exist for?
I would say that given the dynamics of, we're going to know over the next month or two what the path of this exogenous variable, being the coronavirus, is likely, and the expectation is it'll clear up in April, but also, the uncertainty surrounding the election. It's going to be resolved sometime between now and Election Day.
Julian Emanuel with us, BTIG Chief Equity and Derivative Strategist. Julian, I want to go, and I don't want to talk about E-Trade Morgan Stanley. I understand that's inappropriate, but I want to speak to you about the kind of companies that are seeing low single-digit flat revenue growth right now. What bogey do they need to desire? Do they need just to get back to nominal GDP 4%? Are those days done? Can you get valued in this market with mid-single-digit revenue growth?
Well, the issue there is that kind of low and slow grower. Actually, for the most part, their stock price has outperformed massively over the last couple of years.
Explain that further.
Because they are in sectors that are perceived as to be defensive and bond proxies for the most part. What we would say is, if we are about to go into an environment where yields, however gently, because central banks are still behind, monetary accommodation, but yields on the long end, if they do pick up, that will become a challenge stock price performance metric.
What's your number on revenue growth where you say in any sector, is it 5% revenue growth is the appropriate number?
That's what we're thinking about this year, and that's reasonably consistent with earnings growth progressions in the cycle.
John, this is a huge statement, because I thought, Honeywell out with 8% organic sales like 12, 18 months ago. All these companies are doing 2 and 3-ish, 4-ish%. It's not good enough.
So, Julian, what supports an 18, 19 times multiple?
Exactly.
Well, at this point, it is the yield for the most part and the monetary accommodation. But our view is what will continue to support it after we look through some of the headwinds facing markets is the rotation out of, trillions of dollars of fixed income exposure and trillions of dollars of money market exposure, as high as the depth of the financial crisis, and into
I was having that conversation 10 years ago, Julian. 10 years ago. I remember having those conversations in London, people talking about the big moves coming out of fixed income and into equities. You watch. It'll be the equity guys' world.
He had that conversation.
It's the fixed income world. It has been for the last 10 years. I know we've had a great bull market, but just in terms of the flows, haven't really left fixed income, have they?
No, they haven't. And actually, that's part of the surprise of this year. Our thesis is that you'd start to see the move out and into equities, but you're seeing the wall of cash going into fixed income and equities.
Don't be a stranger. This has been really good. Julian Emanuel, thank you so much at BTIG. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. It was a feisty debate last night in Nevada during NBC's Democratic presidential debate in Las Vegas. First-time participant Michael Bloomberg faced the brunt of attacks while on stage. Former Vice President Joe Biden slammed the former New York mayor.
The mayor says that he has a great record, that he's done these wonderful things. Well, the fact of the matter is he has not managed his city very, very well when he was there. He didn't get a whole lot done. He had stop and frisk, throwing close to 5 million young black men up against the wall.
Bloomberg, when pressed about when he will release his tax return, says it will be in a few weeks.
We do business all around the world, and we are preparing it. The number of pages will probably be thousands of pages. I can't go to TurboTax. We do business all around the world, and we are preparing it. The number of pages will probably be thousands of pages. I can't go to TurboTax.
We should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Millions of South Koreans were told to stay home amid coronavirus fears that originated from China. Confirmed coronavirus cases have spiked in South Korea and are still growing fast. There are almost 40 new cases of infection in and around Daegu, a southeastern city of 2.5 million people. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John?
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Doing my taxes at the moment.
Are you over there doing them?
Doing my taxes at the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
It's complex because I have the UK accounts too and the accounts in the United States.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Do you have TurboTax up right now on your Bloomberg terminal?
No, I'm lucky that this company allows me to use Deloitte.
Oh, well.
Yes, very, very fortunate.
Mrs.
Very well taken care
Mrs. Keene
of.
does our taxes.
Very, very well taken care
It's
of.
paid to the order of the Internal Revenue Service. And
interesting.
It's painful.
Painful for
Futures at -5. This is Bloomberg.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/.
Discover Cork with Aer Lingus when you fly from London from $55.99 each way as part of a return trip. Experience this vibrant city and head to the coast for authentic Irish seafood and stunning scenery. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at aerlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
Vodafone 5G will have the power to change your world. From driverless cars to virtual reality and real-time gaming. That's why we're rolling out 5G across the UK. Discover Vodafone 5G on the UK's best mobile data network. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
NPerf testing awarded Vodafone Best 2019 mobile internet performance based on 35,664 tests on the NPerf app in the UK. Coverage may vary. Visit vodafone.co.uk.
Suffering from house embarrassment? At Wix, there's 15% off tiles and flooring, so maybe give the downstairs loo a go. Ends Monday. Exclusions apply.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one, 'cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 8:17 on Wall Street. Futures are lower this morning. Let's go to the First Word breaking news desk. For today's morning call, here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. Like you said, U.S. futures are posting modest losses right now with the news of the morning that Morgan Stanley is buying E-Trade Dow futures currently down 37 points. S&P's dropped 5, and Nasdaq futures declined by 16. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.54%, and Shanghai rose 1.8% overnight, while European markets are trading lower, led by losses in Spain. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, initial jobs claims and Philly Fed, and at 10 o'clock, the leading index. After earnings, Zillow is trading higher by 16% in the pre-market, and in deal news, Morgan Stanley is buying a trade for $13 billion in an all-stock deal. In other news, L Brands said that Leslie Wexner to step down as chairman and CEO. They are also selling Victoria's Secret to Sycamore Partners. Wrapping things up, AMD was cut to equal weight at Wells Fargo, while Salesforce's price target was raised to a street high of $230 over at RBC. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
Bill, thank you. And here live breaking news over your Bloomberg. Type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. And now we begin a 2-hour discussion of a 2-hour debate last night. John and I watched every single minute of it. John, when you're a political consultant, it is amazing your employment ends the first Wednesday of November. Our guest, November 4th, 2008, see ya. Pink slip. He handled John McCain's campaign as well. He is experienced in the reality. Things change that first Tuesday of November.
He is now, I'm pleased to say, a Bloomberg political contributor for this station. Fantastic to have you with us, Rick Davis. Good morning to you.
My suspicion is my tenure will end at this election.
It may end at the end of this interview.
By the way, when your tenure ends on a losing campaign, you want it to end on a losing campaign.
Rick, let's talk about the future and what it holds for President Donald Trump. How happy was he watching that play out last night? If he saw any of it?
I think he was one of the two big winners last night, right? I mean, I'm sure he was riveted. The live blogging, better known as the Donald Trump Twitter account, it can't be avoided. And so I think he saw a real dissension amongst the Democrats that will continue to have them sort of self-immolate for a long time. I don't think he sees an emerging candidate against him. I think the early efforts to try and influence the Democratic primary by beating up on Joe Biden probably was a waste of his good time and money. I think what he saw last night was the Democrats are going to take care of themselves for a while.
So you said there were two winners. That's one. Who was the second?
I think the socialist wing of the Democratic Party. I mean, the two people who came out of last night's debate were Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, who seemed to be the survivors.
Do you think that Michael Bloomberg, the majority owner and founder of Bloomberg LP, which is the owner of this radio station, do you think that his entrance to the stage ended up helping Bernie Sanders by taking some of the attention away from him?
Well, I think his entrance on the stage definitely changed the entire dynamic of these debates.
Well, they woke up, Rick.
Yeah, the 8 previous debates were snoozers. Wouldn't have spent 10 minutes watching those things. And
I didn't.
And the decline in viewership was a good example of that. But last night, they came alive. I mean, there was more fighting there than in any Vegas fight that you've ever seen.
I want to go back to, I believe, July 18, 2015. The President of the United States, Senator McCain, was, quote, a war hero because he was captured in the Vietnam War. The number of Republicans that walked away from that candidate at that moment is uncountable. What do those people do the first Tuesday of November? Are they going to re-up with Trump? Or are they going to find a Democratic candidate they can go with? Or are they going to find the senator from Vermont where they say no?
Yeah, I think people make a mistake assuming that these kind of comments by President Trump don't have a negative impact on him, right? I mean, like he says all these things like I can walk out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and my base is not affected. Problem is the base is a smaller base of the Republican Party than it was when he made those comments in 2016. So when you look at what punished him so far are suburban white women voters, especially those with college
education. Are they going to vote for Bernie Sanders?
They're going to vote for anybody other than Donald Trump.
You think they will vote for the senator from Vermont?
Yeah, look, we've seen in 2016 the votes were against the candidate Hillary Clinton, not for Donald Trump. And I think you're going to have exactly the same phenomenon now, where the votes that come out on Election Day are going to be against Donald Trump, not for whoever the Democratic nominee is.
Who do you think Donald Trump wants to run against?
I think Donald Trump loves this sport, right? I mean, whether it's a dove or a quail, he wants to shoot anything that comes into his view. And so I don't think he has a point of view after last night's debate as to who would be strongest. Bernie, in his mind, probably is a tougher candidate because he has the same kind of unleashed rhetoric. He isn't, sewn into the fabric of truth. And he's just like Donald Trump in many ways. And so, he goes after the same sort of rural white community that Trump does.
That's the key here. Can that rural white community that voted for the President of the United States swing all the way to the left to a so-called self-proclaimed democratic socialist? Do you think that can happen?
No, I think this is the one case where you're going to have a hard time convincing Americans to vote for Bernie Sanders in rural America. That being said, urban and suburban voters are his meat and potatoes.
Do we have to see some of the Democratic candidates drop out in order to consolidate support around one?
Yeah.
How quickly?
You look at what happened in the Republican primary in 2016, where candidates stayed in the race too long. They didn't consolidate the center of the party, and it allowed Donald Trump, without ever getting past 40% of the vote, to win the nomination. You see exactly the same thing starting to happen in the Democratic Party.
How quickly do you have to start seeing some of the candidates drop out in order to prevent that same sort of trend?
Well, I think this was the biggest advantage for Trump last night, is there was no indication from last night's debate that anyone's walking away after the Nevada caucuses or after South Carolina, which are the next 2 weekends. Super Tuesday, 14 states in one night. If you have the same crowd doing this, it's the best thing that could happen to Bernie Sanders.
Quickly here, you're encyclopedic on this. Give our listeners coast to coast an image into South Carolina. Give your take on the geography of South Carolina with those 6 fractious candidates, and they debate the next Tuesday.
Yeah, what we saw last night was a little bit of the beginning of what happens in a place like South Carolina, where you have a very distributed electorate, right? It's not like the other states that have voted, who are pretty homogeneous. And what you see is you can only take votes from the person either on your immediate right or left ideologically. And so what you saw last night is Buttigieg picking a fight with Amy Klobuchar. Why? Amy Klobuchar isn't the threat.
A lot of people ask
why. He wants
why.
those votes on his right, and he can't get the votes from Elizabeth Warren on his left, so he's kind of pinched. So he needs to go to South Carolina and find Amy Klobuchar votes, which is why the two of them exploded so much last night.
But other than Vice President Biden and some would say Mayor Bloomberg, great. Where the traditional presidential candidates up there last night?
Well, there's nothing traditional anymore about presidential politics, it seems. Donald Trump really set a standard that everybody seems to be jumping down to in order to be president. And I think that's what you saw last night.
This could be a longer conversation.
Great. Can we go to Charleston?
Yes,
I love Charleston. Fantastic
College of the Charleston.
Rodney
Great
Scott
mathematics.
barbecue.
Both my kids went to the College of Charleston.
Mathematics at Charleston kills,
Road
doesn't
trip.
Yep.
We'll take Rick with us.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm looking forward to that. Just got to get someone to sign off on it.
Road trip.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, this is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
Such a lustful life. The circus comes to town.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube.
And decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of off-peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. £1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
On a TUI tour, our English-speaking local guides will take you off the tourist trail. They won't just help you find the perfect souvenir, they'll show you how to make it. Choose from over 70 unforgettable tours worldwide. From tranquil temples in India to sunrise safaris in South Africa. On a TUI tour, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Book now and enjoy up to £200 off per booking. Booking T's and C's and minimum spend applies. Selected holidays only. At all protected.
The B&Q 3 for 2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3 for 2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Excludes white and ready mixed trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. Equity futures down 0.2% on the S&P 500. We're down by 6 points. Let's get you some economic data, shall we? Let's cross over to Vinny, Dow Judice.
Jonathan, jobless claims up for a second week, but they're still close to a half-century low, up by 4,000 last week to 210,000 for what it's worth, in line with Wall Street forecasts. More evidence that manufacturing may be bouncing back. Another regional report from the Federal Reserve System, the Philadelphia Fed's Regional Economic Index, February topping forecast up to 36.7. Still on the agenda, the index of leading economic indicators, that could be up because of low jobless claims. Quickly, 2020 marks the 100th anniversary of radio broadcasting as we know it. I did some research on our flagship station in New York. Before Tom Keene live in the 1930s, there was Frank Sinatra live.
There was. That was.
Can you belt one out for us, Tom? Can you belt one out for
us? He could, Vinny. I'd love to hear it.
New York.
That's beautiful.
New York.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
It's a true story, Vinny. Once upon a time on my birthday, many years ago, Tom sent me a nice video of him playing the piano, then turning to the guitar as well. It was a great tune. And he sang Happy Birthday. That was beautiful.
That's beautiful.
I've still got the video on my old phone somewhere.
Yes, it's buried in the vault.
Just to bribe.
Twitter.
Just to bribe.
Twitter.
If things get a little bit dark, a little bit tense,
let's move on.
The video's good to go.
Thank you. Vinny Del Giudice there with incredible labor numbers. Let us digress here. We got a lot going on this morning, and we need to get back to Econ 101. How about American economic growth? And of course, the backdrop here is the oddities of the labor market. Brett Ryan really slices and dices for Deutsche Bank. They've got a wonderful team over there. And what's interesting is what I would call, as a general statement, an optimistic house. They've gotten more cautious. Brett, have you marked down your GDP recently? Can you even tell me 12 months run rate of GDP is 2.0, or dare I say below 2%?
Hey, Tom. Good morning. And yeah, I mean, the data this morning, the Philly Fed seems to be speaking of "Fly Me to the Moon" in terms of Frank Sinatra tunes, but that's probably a weather impact there.
Yeah.
But on our GDP call, we're still at 2.2 on a Q4 over Q4 basis, but our Q1 number is 1.4. And what we're trying to point out here is that the Fed's narrative and the market's narrative is that the strong labor market and consumer spending is going to carry the day, through this soft patch in business investment and trade, right? And what we're doing is we're pointing out some where there could be some cracks in that story. And we've been talking about this for a few months now, the slowing in hours worked, the slowing in wage growth, and more recently, the spike down in job openings.
Right.
And job openings have been, a bit of a leading indicator in the past in terms of payroll.
I want to get out front of Richard Clarida. He's on the Death Star right now speaking to Steve Leisman. I'm sure that's a good conversation. Clarida is, of course, out with the headline, fundamentals of U.S. economy are strong. Give us an update on your Fed rate cuts right now, 1 or 2 this year. Where's Deutsche Bank?
We don't think they cut this year. We think they're able to hold off until next year as they transition to a soft form of average inflation targeting. And we think their initial move will be to, use forward guidance to try to gin up inflation expectations. And then when, our inflation forecast, we don't see core PCE getting back above 2%.
Wow.
In the next year.
Wow.
And so eventually they're going to be forced to, sort of prove that they're committed to the strategy.
John, I just want to say we're killing it. Maria has Greenspan on right now. We talked to him a couple of weeks ago. Our good friend Richard Clarida is on CNBC. We have Brett Ryan at Deutsche Bank. We are winning.
Brett's crushing it, but Brett says something really important, so let's not bury the lead. You think there's cracks in the labour market right now, Brett? That's a non-consensus call, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's one of the. To be clear, all of the unemployment rate says job market's really healthy, right? And what we're saying is that you're seeing some cracks in labor demand, right? First firms start to slow hours worked, then they start to slow wages and wage growth and push back on that if margins are being squeezed or demand seems to be falling off. The last shoe to drop is laying workers off, and that's when you get a recession, right? And so firms are reluctant to lay workers off because it is still a tight labor market. But the hiring trend has been falling. I mean, and that's to be expected somewhat. But now we're just seeing a few more signs of where demand may be slowing for labor. And if it continues on a gradual trend, then that's okay. But you just have to be worried, a little bit more concerned than most people seem to be appreciating.
Okay.
Of how strong the labor market.
Well, Brett, give me a sense of just your conversations with clients at the moment, your market participants. How receptive are they to this argument? Do they turn around to you and say, Brett, you might be right, but until I see it in claims, I'm not going to do anything? What kind of responses do you hear?
Yeah, definitely claims is the common argument. And that's for sure, claims are the best labor market indicator out there. And we've written about that, especially continuing claims. Until you see continuing claims in an 1850 type range, we're at 1726 today, you really don't have to be that concerned. But for sure, I think people are recognizing that, as we get into the back half of the year and political uncertainty sets in, maybe you want to, and given that credit spreads are at tights, maybe you want to take a little bit of risk off here and start to question, where could everybody be wrong?
My head is spinning here. I've got Brett Ryan on, folks, and he's giving me this caution on labor, John, as you brilliantly caught. And I got Richard Clarida giving me headlines saying it's a good picture and monetary policy is accommodative. Brett, why are we talking about a rate cut?
Well, I think the market's certainly pricing a rate cut by the middle of the year. Some on the back of the coronavirus. I think that's fueling some of it. But maybe the bond market's seeing sort of similar things that we are.
Yeah, but what does Deutsche Bank say? Are you telling me we're going to justify a rate cut with a 2.2% GDP growth?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to envision that, right?
Thank you. Okay.
But the Fed cut 75 basis points last year, and the economy still managed to eke out close to 2% growth. And so, I think it's finding a calibration of we're in a permanently low rate environment, or not permanently, but at least for a long period of time, a low rate environment. Just how low that is in order to be accommodative, the Fed's still sort of, feeling around in the dark about that.
When you talk about the cracks in the labor market, there's a question of how long it is before people start using the R word again, recession, because that's pretty much off the table at this point. Where did we push that back to?
Well, I think, we haven't been calling for recession yet. I think it's notable that the Fed's preferred measure of the yield curve, the 3-month and then the 18-month forward, is inverted again. And that's been what their research has shown has been one of the best indicators in terms of recession from a curve perspective. It's hard. It's hard to call these things. It's very difficult to call these things. What's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back? Is it going to be a financial story, a financial conditions story? But I think one of the things that we're focused on is financial conditions look really good, but that's in contrast to what some of the fundamentals, the ISM and the non-manufacturing ISM, which they've stabilized, but they're not strongly rebounding. Today's Philly Fed, the headline looks really good, but that's definitely a weather boost there. The details are more mixed, and so I think and it's also, what does a recession look like, right? You're gonna get a recession sometime in the next few years. The question is, how deep is it? What does it look like? Is it a 2000 type scenario where you have 2 quarters of capex down and 2 quarters of rising unemployment, or is it a 2008 disaster, 2009 disaster? It's probably not going to be 2008, 2009, right?
Brett, we got to leave it there. Brett Ryan, we got to leave it there. I'm sorry. Brett Ryan with Deutsche Bank this morning. John, this is absolutely bizarre to get a Deutsche Bank view of 2.2% GDP, and they're talking brilliantly there in the labor economy. Well, I've got Greenspan up on the screen quoting a 198. Right now, the 30-year bond is 1.9785, and the vice chairman's telling me everything's wonderful.
Well, the vice chairman,
it's like surreal.
Look, to be honest with you, good
this
friend
is like
of this
talking
program.
tots.
But let's be honest. I remember talking to someone whose parent was in the world of central banking, and I said to him, "What does it say? What's the secret ingredient?" And he said, "You've got to be a good liar. You've got to be a good liar if you're a policymaker on a central bank." Let's be honest. If the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve came out today and said the same things that Brett has just said, which essentially is factual, it's factual, job openings are down, all these data points are there for everyone to see, we'd have a very adverse reaction in this market.
There is a question, though, and I thought that this was a really compelling data point, that not until last year workers with some college education got back to their pre-2008 wage level, talking about how there has been a lag effect within the lower income Americans. You're finally seeing them see the wage gains that upper tier income earners earned. This is what the Fed is looking at. They're saying, why should we stymie this recovery if finally that cohort is getting some gains? Agree. I think that this is what a lot of people are arguing. The question is, the longer this goes on, is that elevating asset prices to such a degree that you exacerbate some of the inequalities that they're trying to fight with this?
I'd translate that. I think that's right, Lisa, but the way I'd translate it is simple, folks. The idea that 2% GDP growth is just unacceptable to everyone, including the politicians. People are just saying no, and the Fed's putting the fire. Well, John, where's the rate cut betting?
1 to 2 in and around over the next 12 months.
It's been increasing. The bets for 2 rate cuts increasing, 50 basis point rate increase cut by year end.
Let's bet on some quality news from New York City with our news. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. The gloves came off on the debate stage in Las Vegas last night as the Democratic presidential contenders squared off for yet another round. Senator Bernie Sanders sparred with first-time participant Michael Bloomberg, who slammed the senator's socialist policies.
We are living in many ways in a socialist society right now. Problem is, as Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us, we have socialism for the very rich, rugged individualism for the poor.
And there was this exchange between Bloomberg and Senator Elizabeth Warren.
We're not going to throw out capitalism. We tried countries tried that. It was called communism, and it just didn't work.
So let me make a proposal that will work, that has not only support from a majority of Democrats, but also from a majority of independents and a majority of Republicans. And that is a 2-cent wealth tax on all fortunes above $50 million. You hit $1 billion, you got to pay a few pennies more.
We should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg Radio. Roger Stone will be sentenced today. The former confidant of President Trump raised questions about the objectivity of jurors who convicted him of lying to Congress, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. The jury will enter its third day of deliberations in the Harvey Weinstein sexual assault trial in New York today. The fate of the former movie mogul is in the hands of 7 men and 5 women, deciding whether he is guilty of rape. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 27. Journalist and analyst in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Hey, Michael Barr. Great to catch up with you, sir. Thank you. That was your news. Here is your price action. We are around about 47 minutes away from the opening bell in New York City. So let's get straight to it. Equity futures are down by 1/3 on the S&P 500, off by around about 9 points. In your bond market, treasuries as follows. We will get some PMIs from the United States and Europe around about 24 hours away. We'll get them tomorrow on both sides of the Atlantic. Treasury yields coming down 3 basis points. 153 is your yield on a 10-year. From New York City this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. There still is some opportunity for home flippers, even though there are fewer bargains out there.
We see a lot of opportunity, especially in the South, Midwest, some parts of the Southwest.
John Beecham, CEO of Turek Capital Partners, says Turek is the largest lender to the fix and flip industry in the United States. And he says these days the focus is shifting away from the quick flip and turning more to the fix.
If you look at what was happening 5 years ago, people were buying what we would call paint and carpet deals, where you're buying a property, putting a relatively low amount of work into it, and selling that property. Those deals still exist, but they're a smaller portion of the business than they were just 4 or 5 years ago. So we're seeing the market shift towards people buying properties and adding value, adding another room, turning a single-family property into a multifamily property, expanding the property, and sort of changing the nature of the type of deals that are happening.
And that is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIP.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast, all on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
The B&Q 3 for 2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3 for 2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Excludes white and ready mix trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive this weekend. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Morgan Stanley will buy E-Trade for $13 billion in stock, a 31% premium over yesterday's close. BTIG strategist Julian Emanuel tells Bloomberg Surveillance the move reflects a shift to capture the growing wealth of retail investors.
The retail investor is likely to become an ever more important factor as millennials inherit the greatest wealth transfer of all time, and they're underinvested chronically. So the answer is yes, it makes sense.
And E-Trade adds $360 billion of client assets to Morgan Stanley's $2.7 trillion. Morgan Stanley shares are lower. They're down about 4 1/3% this morning. E-Trade higher, up more than 24%. Watching shares of L Brands down about 12% this morning. Integrate to sell a controlling stake in its Victoria's Secret brand to private equity firm Sycamore Partners in a deal that values the lingerie brand at $1.1 billion. L Brands also said billionaire founder Les Wexner will step down as chairman and chief executive. U.S. stock index futures are lower, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. All Bloomberg, with S&P futures down about 9 points. Dow futures down 71. NASDAQ futures down 31. The DAX in Germany's down 0.25%. 10-year Treasury up 9/32, yield 1.53%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.8% or 42 cents at $53.71 a barrel, and COMEX gold is up 0.4% or $7 to $16.1870 an ounce. The euro 1.0798 against the dollar, British pound 1.2874, and the yen at 11.97. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Thank you so much, Karen. Right now, we're looking at E-Trade shares ahead of the market, up 24%. Morgan Stanley shares somewhat lower. This comes after Morgan Stanley said that it is buying E-Trade in a $13 billion deal, a more than 30% premium over where the shares priced closed yesterday. Sonali Basak, who covers all things financial here for us on Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg News, joining us in our Interactive Broker studios. And there really is a question, what is Morgan Stanley getting with this deal, given where the valuation is, Sonali?
It's Morgan Stanley for the masses, Lisa. So you have a bank here that used to mostly serve wealthy individuals, and they want to go way downstream. They want to serve 13 million customers, and they want to create a full-scale bank, a full-scale digital bank, in which they have checking and savings accounts for millions of people.
All right, so back up. The idea here being that E-Trade caters to retail clients, not necessarily the millionaires and billionaires, and that bringing them in through their brokerage accounts will also generate more deposits and more wealth management and just that whole cross-selling kind of chain of revenues, correct?
Yes, yes, and yes. So something interesting. Remember, Morgan Stanley, if you Googled it in the past, people would ask, is Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan the same thing? Most people don't relate to Morgan Stanley because it's an investment bank. It's a wealth manager for wealthier people. But now they're saying they want everyone to know what Morgan Stanley is.
Will this do it? I mean, is it worth it? Are analysts saying that this deal seems like it could be really lucrative for Morgan Stanley?
Listen, initially the stock is not doing well. So investors on the front end have their concerns. Why do those concerns exist? For more financial reasons, more likely. What does this mean for buybacks and capital return to shareholders? Strategically, it makes a lot of sense. Why is that? James Gorman, former McKinsey consultant, took over Morgan Stanley, made them one of the biggest wealth managers in America, pushed up those margins, and now is making that even bigger. He's been successful the first time around.
Okay, we're beginning to get in some of the numbers here, and Allison Williams was real clear about the overpaying here. And what's fascinating here, and I look the equivalent of J.P. Morgan in our charge card business, revenues are so dear and difficult in the business that everybody's extending out the x-axis, the timeline, and they're making very clear the break-even period on doing E-Trade is much longer than expected.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard from your sources how long is long yet?
2 to 3 years?
Well, I would say that's short. I mean, they're going to go
for
longer.
To financially, it makes sense for them to do this big strategic thing about becoming America's bank, right? To build a full-scale, full-service digital bank will take many years. So think about how long it took Gorman for his first.
Okay. I want to go, Sonali, into your expertise then on Goldman Sachs. You were just at the Investor Day as well. Lisa brilliantly brings up that this is the retailizing of Morgan Stanley. Okay, great. Is this essentially they're trying to get out front of Goldman Sachs? Did they acquire E-Trade so somebody else wouldn't be able to buy it?
This is a huge way to stay competitive, Tom. Yes, right? Goldman Sachs, for Gorman this morning to say that they are building a full-scale digital bank, that is something that Goldman had said before.
Yeah.
So how do they compete now in their own plan?
Right, and we are seeing that Goldman Sachs shares down 0.5% in pre-market trading, and but it's you're going to be speaking with James Gorman, correct? With James Gorman of Morgan Stanley later today. What is sort of the main question that you're hoping to get from him?
Well, one thing I want to know about him is, does this extend his tenure as CEO of the company? So we've been already looking at Morgan Stanley's succession plan for some time. Also, remember, Morgan Stanley is still the number 1, 2, or 3 investment bank every year, depending on how you look at it. Huge equity underwriter. Are the wealth managers now taking back the power of the bank? They are the number 1 stock trading firm in America. What does this acquisition mean for them? It's probably going to push them much further ahead.
One thing, and this will be fascinating, your conversation with Mr. Gorman later today, and this goes to UBS, where Axel Weber was heated this morning with me and Francine.
That's because he made fun of you, Tom.
Yeah, I did, but it's where wealth management is. Is E-Trade wealth management, or I love this idea that I can't remember whether you, Lisa, said it. It's just nothing more than a digital bank. I mean,
I want to be very, very clear about that. I want to be very clear that Morgan Stanley was a wealth manager. What they want to become is a bank.
They want to become a bank. What's a digital bank? What does that look like?
I mean,
when you talk to Mr. Solomon, okay, but this is important. You talk to David Solomon. He's got a vision of digital bank. When you talk to Gorman today, is his vision the same?
And how much is this just you don't need the brick and mortar physical space, which are being shut down?
I don't know. Is Jamie Dimon talking about a digital bank? He's just doing it.
Can I give you somebody else here that should be a little concerned about this deal?
Please.
Goldman had to go to Apple, right? They're the Googles, the Amazons, and all of these tech companies in the world that wanted to get into banking, and Morgan Stanley is saying, we don't need you. They're saying we can do this right now.
Without big tech.
Exactly.
Interesting.
That's actually fascinating. I mean, the idea being that big tech isn't necessarily going to have the seat at the table that a lot of people thought.
Okay, so what are you going to ask Mr. Gorman today? Give us an outline here. This is a really important interview. What's
so
the theme? Besides, how long is he going to stay around?
Listen, you're talking about Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon has been clipping out the heels of Morgan Stanley's massive stock trading business. So how does this deal fend off J.P. Morgan in that business? That's something people have not asked about. The question you asked before, how long will this take for you to become that full-scale, beautiful digital bank? And where's David Solomon?
Yeah, well, that's the point. And this goes to the FT article yesterday. This is good. Folks, the last 24 hours, I mean, one of the joys of doing this with Lisa is we have no idea what the morning looks like when we wake up. And the basic idea here is Axel Weber in Switzerland, Sonali Basak with James Gorman. You'll see that later today on Bloomberg Television and radio. And then you go on to Sonali's next interview with David Solomon about what the response is. Futures, -9. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
Vision Express understands we're inspired by what we see. Right now, with every pair of glasses, you'll get varifocal lenses half price, plus our 60-day total satisfaction guarantee. Book your eye test online today. Vision Express. Vision taken seriously. Terms and conditions apply. See in store for details.
The Dacia Sandero and Dacia Duster have both won What Car Awards in 2020. And with double the award comes double the celebration. So, we've put a second candle on the cake. Starting from only $6,995, our prices are pretty modest, just like our celebrations. Visit dacia.co.uk to find out more about our range of award-winning cars. Dacia. You do the maths.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
We have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom King. Good morning, Global Wall Street. An extraordinary day. Of course, talking politics. Kevin Cirilli will be with us after his breakfast at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. Looking forward to that, but much more on Global Wall Street. UBS with management changes. We spoke to Axel Weber. He said all that matters is wealth management, and then this bombshell trade we'll talk a lot about in the hour. Paul Sweeney and Tom King with futures at -8, yen 112. I'm going to leave the market out of it right now. Karen will do great data checks through the hour as well. Shonali Basak will speak with James Gorman. Look for that later on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television worldwide. Before we get to David Wilson, Paul, I want to go to the fabulous top live blog on the Bloomberg. Folks, you say to yourself, you saw Michael Bloomberg last night, and you go, well, what is the terminal? Why do people have the terminal that has made Michael Bloomberg get on stage? And top live blog is truly one of those differentiators of why people buy a Bloomberg.
Yeah, we have so many smart people in Bloomberg News that focus on, particular beats. And so in this case, Morgan Stanley,
it's a conference call.
A big day. Yeah, exactly right. So we have a lot of great reporters who cover the financial services beat, and they're really giving us their thoughts real time on the deal, on the details of the deal, on the conference call as it unfolds.
But it's like lemmings off a cliff. Somebody does something and everybody else goes. To the points of the top live blog, do you just assume there's going to be a feeding frenzy in asset management?
I think you do. I mean, I think, you look at the pressure on fees.
Legg Mason.
Exactly right. You look at the pressure on fees, Tom, and it just sparks consolidation on the cost side. Right. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that today.
What's amazing is he had the first cursed account in New York City with Charles Schwab in 1975. We bring in David Wilson. David?
If only I'd had it back then. I was barely paying attention. I was in high school. But that's another story.
Oh, excuse me.
E-Trade's up more than 24% in early trading after accepting that takeover offer from Morgan Stanley. The deal valued at $13 billion. And bear in mind, it's only been about 3 months since Charles Schwab agreed to buy TD Ameritrade for $25 billion. You mentioned Legg Mason, and certainly what's going on in the discount brokerage industry is very similar. Now, Morgan Stanley shares are down 4.5% in early trading. Interactive Brokers, still out there, independent, up 3.5%. So there you go.
Yep.
You could call it a takeover Thursday if you like. We got a couple more deals to mention. Marathon Petroleum's up 4%. People familiar with the matter said the owner of convenience store chain 7-Eleven is in exclusive talks to buy Marathon's gas station unit Speedway for about $22 billion. They said a deal may be reached as soon as next week. We're talking about Japan's 7 & I Holdings, by the way.
Okay.
They own 7-Eleven.
You're a font of wisdom today.
I tried. L Brands down 11%. The retailer agreed to sell a 55% stake in the lingerie chain Victoria's Secret to private equity firm Sycamore Partners. The deal values the business at $1.1 billion. And L Brands founder Leslie Wexner will step down as chairman and CEO.
And the same-store sales just weren't happening, right?
What happened to that brand? I mean, it was powerhouse for so many years.
And then things change. We live in the Me Too era, and certainly Victoria's Secret has suffered, from the way that society is shifting.
Right. Let's continue on.
Viacom CBS down 9.5%. The media company's fourth quarter revenue trailed analysts' lowest estimate in a Bloomberg survey. And bear in mind, these are the first results since Viacom and CBS reunited after 14 years apart.
Is there why? Is it CBS side, Viacom side?
Well,
I think it's just kind of advertising in general, and some of these brands here, and the cord cutting is kind of impacting their cable network business. Yeah,
Michael Nathanson, I'm sure, among others, will have an opinion on that. What else, David?
Ad sales, by the way, down 2%. They also had $468 million in restructuring and other corporate costs. So there you go. Quick run through earnings. You've got the real estate company Zillow, two classes of shares, both up more than 14%. They had a narrower loss and higher revenue last quarter than else expected. Domino's Pizza up 18%. The restaurant chain's fourth quarter results showed sales beat the average estimate the first time in 7 quarters. Earnings also top projections. Pizza doing just fine. Beer, not so much. Specifically, Boston Beer, the owner.
Together? Pizza and beer?
Well, Boston Beer, the owner of Sam Adams and Truly Hard Seltzer, by the way, down 5.5%. Fourth quarter earnings lower than estimates. So is their profit forecast for the year.
One more.
All right. Since we started with deals, we'll end with a deal.
Very good.
Adesto Technologies, the most active stock in early trading, up 55%. They make chips that are all about the Internet of Things.
IoT.
Okay.
Yes,
IoT,
exactly.
yes.
In fact, their ticker is IOTS.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Adesto agreed to be bought by the UK's Dialog Semiconductor. It's an all-cash deal valued at $380 million.
David Wilson, thank you so much. This is a joy. He is a former chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission, but steeped in the heritage of our political system as well, with his father, the former controller for New York State, Arthur Levitt Sr. We welcomed Junior. Last time we talked, Arthur, was on the fractious nature of the Westminster Dog Show. You've been affiliated with Democratic politics. I'm just honored to ask you this question. How did we get from Kennedy Nixon to what we observed last night, Arthur Levitt?
I guess we got to it by virtue of changes in technology and a much more fractious environment. Kennedy and Nixon was absolutely apple pie compared to the kinds of feelings, raw emotions that came out last night. This was a tough night for all of the participants. This was in the trenches, battling for survival.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, we saw this last night, folks, and we'll do it again on Tuesday. Kevin Cirilli to join us later in the hour. Arthur Levitt, there's any number of ways to go on Morgan Stanley and E-Trade. I don't want to ask you about the minutiae of it. I know you're not focused on that, but you can be focused on this wonderful desire to do digital banking and the pending roll-up of global Wall Street in search of profits or the marginal profit. Do we have risk or harm if we execute a roll-up of global Wall Street?
I don't think so. I think there's the normal harm of any change or any roll-up, but I don't see it as being significant enough to say, be careful, we're about to go on the rocks. You've got a discount broker merging with a Wall Street firm. I think it's a very special occasion. I think it's going to work because there's great talent on both sides of that deal. So I think this represents a sea change.
So, Arthur, when I know you so many years on Wall Street. When you think about Goldman Sachs, when you think about Morgan Stanley, you think institutional investment banking, corporations, governments. You don't necessarily think retail, but we're seeing these big institutional investment banks really embracing the retail side of the business. What do you make of that?
That's where the money is. And I think they recognize it. They realize, particularly at this time in history, where our markets have never been more enthusiastic, more favorable, that's where the money's going to go. Wall Street, if anything, is opportunistic, and they see that individual investor is trumping everything, trumping institutional investment, and that's where they're going, and that's why we're seeing these changes.
Right. We make note, Arthur, of your commentary today. I believe it was in the Times. We'll talk about that next time. Arthur Levitt from an elevator. We thank him today for joining us. He's a former chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission and Bloomberg LP board member as well. Paul, I want to focus in, and folks, I'm going to get a little geeky here. You can go to the Bloomberg and go in AAPL Equity WACC, and you get this glorious screen of CFA Level 3 weighted average cost of capital. And all you got to know is it's a matrix of about 5 studies of the return or the profitability or the good news for any given corporation. And Paul, as you know, there's a little chart. You click on some buttons, and instantly I get the return on investment capital for a given company. E-Trade's vector back 9 years of ROIC is really pretty good. I mean, it's not like a terrible company, as Arthur mentioned there. It's a hell of a franchise, but there's no revenue growth future. What's it mean for a company when there's no revenue growth future?
It's interesting, Tommy. You think you take a look at this discount brokerage business and you see the likes of Charles Schwab going to essentially, zero cost for a lot of equity trades, and you think about where is that revenue visibility, but it comes down to they're sitting on so much of investors' cash that they earn a return on that cash and the fee structure. But it's interesting. It's about one of your favorite words, scale.
Scale. I guess Schwab is 20,000 employees. E-Trade is 5,000 employees. The management has to fold in the medical costs, the medical costs of those 4,000 employees. That alone defeats your revenue build.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look at E-Trade, it's a company that it's just, they got almost about 2.9 billion, 2.8 billion of revenue. But I'm looking at the FA screen on the Bloomberg terminal. I don't see a lot of revenue growth there.
No,
and analyst forecasts, there's profits there certainly. But I think, if you're Morgan Stanley, you're saying, hey, we have to double down on the retail side of our business.
Sonali Basak with James Gorman later today, Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television. With the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. Michael Bloomberg came under fierce attack from Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders within the first few minutes of the Democratic debate in Las Vegas last night. They took hits on the amount of money Bloomberg has spent in the presidential race and comments he made about women. Meanwhile, former Vice President Biden talked about health care policy changes.
I'm the only one on this stage that actually got anything done on health care. Okay? I'm the guy the president turned to and said, go get the votes for Obamacare. And I noticed what everybody's talking about is the plan that I first introduced. That is to go and add to Obamacare, provide a public option, a Medicare-like option.
We should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. President Trump held a campaign event of his own in Phoenix, Arizona last night. He took a jab at federal law enforcement.
I hope you're going to be happy because there are a lot of dishonest slime balls out there. Dishonest scum. Dirty cops. A lot of dirty cops. And by the way, the FBI, those guys in that are incredible. But the ones on top, they were absolute scum.
The president also spoke in California yesterday. There are now more than 76,000 cases of the new coronavirus around the world and more than 2,100 deaths, including the first death reported in South Korea, where cases are spiking. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul?
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Futures at -8, Dow futures at -64. The VIX just moving 0.56 points, 14.94. DXY not as strong as earlier, but nevertheless dollar elevated yen with a
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part part was determining that I was going to do it. But I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness.
For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer.
And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
Lives and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Morgan Stanley will buy E-Trade for $13 billion in stock, a 31% premium over yesterday's close. E-Trade shares are up about 24% this morning. Morgan Stanley is down about 5%. Futures this morning are lower. S&P futures down about 8 points. Dow futures down 66. NASDAQ futures down 29. The DAX in Germany is down 0.3%. 10-year Treasury up 7/30 seconds, yield 1.54%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.25% or 68 cents at 53.97 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.4% or $6.30 at 16.1810 an ounce. The euro 1.0810 against the dollar. The yen at 112.02. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. On the data check, it's an interesting nuance with yen 112.01, and I'd also note curve flattening this morning. The 210 spread, the vanilla curve, the difference in yield between the 10-year and the 2-year yield has really come in like 3-4 days in a row, and we're not on the inverted watch, which would be a huge deal, but we're getting there fast. All that matters, and the news flow this morning is great. We got an email in. Phil emails in. Get Luke on. Get Kawa on right now, and let's cut to the important news. Not the Las Vegas soiree, not E-Trade, Morgan Stanley, and all the rest of it. Luke, would you explain why Toronto is not trading for a defenseman? I see forward trade. They need 5 defensemen. Can't they pick up one now?
So I'm kind of a proponent of the idea that the Leafs should do kind of something crazy. We know Morgan Rielly, who besides Jake Muzzin is their best defenseman, has been injured. If the Leafs want to keep him on the injury list until year end, that frees up a lot of salary cap. You could go out and you could take a moonshot on PK Subban. You could really absorb an expensive, good defenseman. And then if you make the playoffs, no salary cap. You can bring all these guys back. We need to do something crazy like that because the back end is very ugly right now.
I just got an email. Mike from Las Vegas says, get back on script. Paul, why don't you help us out here, Mr. Cow? I just had to do that.
Exactly.
Get me going here late in the morning.
Exactly right. So Luke, I look at the world and I see coronavirus. I see threat to global GDP. GDP. I see that reflected in commodities. I've got, my soft commodities down mid-single digits, my hard, the metals are down double digits. They're clearly sensing something's amiss here. I look at the equity markets, I don't see it. What do you think we're seeing in financial markets right now as it relates to kind of these exogenous risks?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. That's where I think the bond market is also kind of, displaying some coronavirus global slowdown. It's in the headline there, but not so much in other classes. The equity market is treating this more from the supply shock angle, aka, the demand, the full year estimates not being lowered as much as Q1 estimates is kind of the way you kind of look at that. Whereas commodities, it's just kind of the face value demand shock right now in terms of what's happening in China, and you can really see the way seasonal demand would normally pick up and can't because of this. That's what matters most, the commodity market. But right now, it's a bit of a zoo, and definitely U.S. stocks and pockets of U.S. stocks are getting detached from anything resembling a fundamental backdrop. And so that's just, do we just chalk it up to the fact that we've got an accommodative Fed and an ECB and other central banks around the world? I think you chalk it up to this is seen as another not something that will cause a recession. This is seen as, no matter how long it'll be, it'll be temporary and not severe enough to be a kind of meaningful inflector for the business cycle. So what do? You just buy the dip, or you don't allow there to be a dip?
This is a really important question, Luke, and I say this with great respect for your true talent and ability, and also your ute. I mean, we have this strange thing this morning. Chairman Greenspan's on with Maria. Steve Leisman over at the Death Stars talking to Richard Clarida. Great interview. We've got Brett Ryan of Deutsche Bank modeling 2.2% GDP forward. Do you work every day at your three Bloombergs just assuming this low interest rate environment goes on forever? And is that really the resilience in equities that Paul notes?
I think this is something we've touched on. We brought up the last time we talked, looking at kind of the justification of how low yields can be used to justify increasingly higher stocks. Right now, if you look at that, poor man's equity risk premium, the earnings yield on the S&P 500, less the 10-year real yield, that still is saying stocks are less expensive than they were at the start of the year. And even if you look at Jerome Powell's testimony, the most recent one before Congress, he said low yields are a fact of life. Now, there are some central bankers. The Bank of Canada has recently said, if we really do enough structural reforms, if we really do enough, we can raise raise productivity. But no, the investment world is operating on the presumption that this low yield environment is forever.
No, the Bank of Canada said Toronto trade for a defenseman. Paul, what's important here is a young Turk like Kawa doesn't know who Paul Volcker is. No. He doesn't know who Walter Heller is back to the 1960s. I mean, this guy is living with a high inflation rate of 3%.
But I think he's absolutely right. I can't think of a scenario. As I listen to the central bankers around the world, Luke, I kind of go back to kind of what you're saying is here. It seems like, I'm just looking at my screen here, I got the German, 10-year, 2-year, all negative rates. Japan at negative rates. The U.S. at record, kind of approaching record low rates. What changes that environment, do you think?
I think the only thing that could is huge political seismic upheavals and the kind of what the trade war could have done over sustained time to supply chains. But Tom lived in a world where inflation was always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. I live in a world where inflation is always and everywhere a temporary fleeting phenomenon, and that's the biggest difference. U.S. shale means that the biggest source of upward volatility in inflation for the U.S. economy has been effectively capped, and globalization means that most of the time you will see a migration to that has the effect of keeping prices relatively subdued or not spiraling as much as they would have in the past.
Is Sidney Crosby lights out? He's just killing it
completely.
It's like he hasn't lost half a step.
Yeah. You should have seen what the Penguins beat writers wrote about Toronto in the game after. It was quite cutting. It's one of those things you read it and fair but true. Basically, these guys are all as talented as Sidney Crosby. They just don't want to win. So it's quite depressing.
Game this year? Do we had the outdoor game?
The Avalanche. We got 5 outdoor games a year. There's too many now.
Okay,
there used to be one. Am I right?
Two games, one Canada only outdoor game, and one you guys can have an outdoor game.
See that? The deal here, folks, just so you know, because he's got his three, for folks, you got to understand, when he logs on, Staten Island dims. And so, the only way we get Kyle into the studio is we got to do the requisite seconds of hockey talk.
Yeah, and on the Leafs.
It's a rumor on the Leafs. We didn't even mention the dreaded Canadians. Lukawa, thank you for briefing us this morning. And folks, this is serious with a 30-year bond, 1.98%. Again, 2 years held in pretty well. Like the tapes, Paul sort of says a 2-year of 139, and it's actually 141. Yep. So it's there, and that's where you get the curve flattening in under 13 basis points on the 210. That bears watching.
Yep, and the 1.98 on the 30-year is just extraordinary, Tom, as you called out there. So it's just amazing kind of what we're seeing on the rates. We got the S&P futures down 7, Dow down 66, NASDAQ down 30. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Publicly available out of contract, non-promotional pricing. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Send message to Elise. Salut. Sorry, I'm running late. Just in the car now. Send. I forgot the cake. Send. Actually, great news. SatNav has found a new route. See you in 10.
Message on the move in the Citroen C1 and stay connected. Experience Citroen C1, available from £149 per month with initial rental of £149. Citroen. Please drive responsibly. Citroen UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. Personal lease. You will not own the vehicle. Offer on field VTI 72.5 speed manual. 6,000 miles per annum. Guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility criteria and return conditions apply. PSA Finance UK Limited.
The B&Q 3 for 2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3 for 2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Excludes white and ready-mix trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
Peoples of London. Cooking for family and friends is a real hassle, Sergey tells me. So I, Alexander, occasionally take care of marvelous dinner for whole family.
Which means we all go out for meerkat meals.
Exactly. How did you guess? Get 2 for 1 on food for up to 6 people at your local favorites, like the Crooked Well with Meerkat Meals. When you buy, so compare the market. Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. The opening bell brought to you by SEI. With a 50-year history of innovation, SEI's outsourced solutions help achieve lasting success for investment managers, asset owners, private banks, and independent advisors. Learn more at SEIC.com. And the S&P 500 lower at the open, down 0.2% or 6 points at 3379. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.2% or 58 points at 29,287. And the Nasdaq's down 0.2% or 22 points at 97.95. 10-year Treasury up 7/32, yield 1.54%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1 1/3% or 72 cents at 54.01 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 1/3% or $5.80 at 16.1760 an ounce. The euro 1.0815 against the dollar. The yen is at 112.10. Tom and Paul.
Thank you so much, Karen. Greatly appreciate that right now. We've got sentencing happening, I believe, this morning for Mr. Stone. He's arrived at the courthouse. John Tucker, you've been following that? Is that the news flow right now?
Well, it was overnight that the president retweeted something from Tucker Carlson. What has happened to Roger Stone should never happen to anyone in our country again, raising the question of pardon. I also like the fact that there's a giant inflatable rat with a Trump hairdo that has just been inflated outside the courthouse.
Really? That's in the video. Interesting. Our Michael Barr will be following this with our teams through the morning as one of the huge sets of news flow today. One of them that we're seeing as well is simply the market dynamics. Dean Kernett writes a terse letter for his company on all this. Dean, I hate to tell you, but someone was bragging about you big time in our studios today, that you were way out front of these market dynamics. Give us a 2-week look back on what you did with the move in gold.
Right. Well, first I'll take any compliment I can get.
That's a rare one, but go ahead.
We've been looking at gold for a while now, and I'm always fascinated by its properties. I consider it an asset mostly that's driven by psychology. There is, of course, the supply-demand backdrop for gold. I actually think it's more important to consider in light of how people are thinking and feeling, and it's got, right now, I think, some properties that make it compelling to add into the portfolio. It is, in some sense, a defensive asset that is carrying positively, and that's really hard to find. In other words, put gold in the portfolio. It's going up. It's up several percent this year. It obviously had a great year last year, and it's doing two things. It's negatively correlated to the S&P. So in a 2018 Q4 scenario, gold does extremely well. And it's obviously attached to the lower rates scenario that we're seeing play out as well. And so remember, typically in a risk-off, stocks fall and rates fall. But there are other instances where stocks can fall without rates falling. That's Q4 18. And then in the middle of 19, as Powell did his gigantic pivot, stocks did well because bond markets were rallying so strongly, and gold did incredibly well in the middle of 2019 as well. So it's got this defensive characteristic in a portfolio of risk assets that's also carrying positively, which we really advocate for.
So, Dean, as I look at my global commodity price screen, GLCO, I see a lot of red on my commodities screen. I think that's obviously reflecting some concerns about the global economy, maybe obviously attributable to the coronavirus to a large degree. Yet the equity markets are kind of, not necessarily reflecting the similar levels of concern. When you look at the options market and the equity market, what do you see out there?
So many interesting dynamics going on right now. So you're pointing to the more industrial-centric commodities like copper, and a lot of folks have looked at things like the copper-to-gold ratio as an indicator that something is wrong in terms of the backdrop for the strength of growth. I think there's potentially something to that. But we've got this risk-on sentiment. It's a little bit of a chase. I think it's absolutely manifest mostly in tech stocks. So a couple of things that really have us a little concerned. One is the concentration at the top of the triple Q is as high as we've ever seen it. The top 5 names comprise 44% of the market cap. Now, these top 5 names happen to be making tons and tons of money. They're driving the profitability of the index at large, both in the Qs and the S&P. So that's fair for now. It just tells us that there's the potential that constituency loses